Chapter 1344. 3 days later, Feng Zue came to the Cherry Blossom Palace for the first time. This was a palace filled with light pink cherry blossom trees. As long as one walked in, they could smell the rich cherry blossom fragrance. When the night breeze blew, the flowers withered. The emperor has arrived. Eunuch Li's loud voice rang through the entire Cherry Blossom Palace. After a few seconds, Mu Ying quickly came out and kneeled down. Ying greets the emperor. She was wearing a long red silk dress, and the red coral lotus hairpin in her hair was swaying. Her lips were red and her teeth were white, making her look very beautiful. This perfect appearance wasn't rare. When she woke up every morning, she carefully put on her makeup, waiting for Feng Zue's arrival, because she knew that he would definitely come. Even if it wasn't for her, it was for her little sister, Feng Zue coldly replied. He didn't even look at her as he headed in that direction. Mu Ying's heart skipped a beat. She tightly clenched her fists and gritted her teeth as her heart turned cold. She spent all her effort to dress up like this just to make Feng Zue's eyes light up, but he didn't even look at her as he headed for Mu Tian. Why? Just why? Her younger sister was clearly a fool. So what if she was devastatingly beautiful? A fool was a fool. She would always be a fool. She was only worthy of marrying someone like Li and living a normal life. But based on what could she enter the harem and receive the love of the ice-cold emperor? Based on what? Feng Zue slowly walked into the room and looked at Mu Tian sitting on the couch in her white brocaded clothes. His ice-cold eyes weren't as sharp, but there was no light at all. It was a pair of dark eyes that were boundlessly dark, without any hope at all. Mu Tian heard the footsteps and felt that someone was approaching. She suddenly looked up at him with a faint smile. Little big brother, you're here. This place really is fun. Tian really likes this place. In the cold winter night, there was always a stove by her side. There were endless delicacies to enjoy, endless silks to wear, and a bunch of fun things. Even if she was an idiot, she could feel that her life had undergone a drastic change. This change came from the man in front of her, this ice-cold emperor who didn't let anyone approach him. It's good that you like it. Feng Zue stopped 3 meters away and didn't come forward. He carefully looked at her face, looking at her in a daze. Actually, there was a big difference between them. He could tell with a single glance that she wasn't the person in front of him. It wasn't because she was a fool, but because he felt. Based on his overflowing love for her, he would know in an instant. Emperor Tian didn't understand this. Mu Ying slowly walked in. Her face was full of virtuousness, and her voice was gentle and delicate. She gave people a feeling that she was very pitiful. Zue Tian. Feng Zue calmly looked up and said in a cold voice, "This one didn't have you come to the palace for anything else. It was just that your little sister wanted you to come." He probably didn't like this feeling. The woman in front of him looked smart and witty. To Mu she was became, in Tian. People who adapt too quickly tend to be the most thoughtful. Chapter 1345. Since I've taken Tian into the palace, this one can guarantee that your Mu family will have wealth and prosperity, not having to worry about food and clothing. Feng Zue narrowed his cold eyes as a trace of hostility flashed in them. But you are not this one's concubine. As the ruler of a country, Feng Zue naturally didn't need to consider how the other side felt when he said this. Ying knows. Mu Ying's lashes trembled as she pursed her lips. Ying will definitely take care of little sister. Feng Zue didn't reply. After looking at Mu Tian, who was playing with herself, he turned to leave the Cherry Blossom Palace. Standing outside the palace, the fragrance of the cherry blossoms filled his nose. He felt that he was a bit funny. It was funny that he was living like a puppet. Little big brother is leaving. Mu Tian raised the porcelain doll in her hand and looked at Mu Ying with puffed up lips. Big sister, why did little big brother leave so quickly? Tian wants to play with him. Pung. Mu Ying angrily raised her hand and took the porcelain doll from Mu Tian's hand before throwing it to the ground. Damn girl, shut up for me. She couldn't control herself as the anger in her heart suddenly attacked her. In her life, as long as there was a man who wanted to approach her, there had never been a man who looked down on her like this. No, even the emperor couldn't do this. How could she be the accessory of a fool like Mu Tian Tian? Woo 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 woo. Mu Tian Tian was scared by her, and tears came out as she cried. Big sister is so fierce. I hate big sister. Tian Tian hates big sister the most. Don't cry. Mu Ying bit her lip and angrily roared out. Mu Tian Tian curled up in fear and didn't dare cry again. She had been like this since she was young. When Mu Ying was angry, Mu Tian Tian didn't even dare cry. She was a weak and small person. She was dumb. She was stupid. She had no brain. She could only rely on her big sister to live. Even if she was to marry, she would be her big sister's accessory. But in her world, all of this was still so simple. She felt that it was enough to have her father and big sister in this world. A girl who was cleaner than a piece of white paper, but her fate wasn't as she wished. After Mu Ying and Mu Tian Tian entered the palace, Feng Zue would go to the Cherry Blossom Palace every day. He would only stay for a short time, being less than half a cup of tea's time. Every time, Mu Ying would dress up differently. Sometimes she would wear heavy makeup, and sometimes she would wear simple and elegant clothes. But there wasn't a single time that Feng Zue's gaze stayed on her for a second. He only looked at Mu Tian Tian before turning to leave. Mu Ying, who had been ignored again and again, had a terrifying idea, and the fuse of this idea was actually Shi Jin. On a certain spring afternoon, Shi Jin sent her personal servant Tao Zi to the Imperial Garden to pick a few flower petals for tea. She didn't expect to bump into Mu Ying, who was also annoyed about going to the Imperial Garden. When Feng Zue went to the Cherry Blossom Hall, he stayed longer this time, as if he was painting for Mu Tian Tian. She wasn't sure what it was for, because she had been driven out by Feng Zue in a very serious manner. His original words were roughly like this. Miss Mu, you should withdraw first. I have a few words with Tian Tian alone. At that moment, she only felt her cheeks burning. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1346. She had accidentally bumped into Tao Zi in the Imperial Garden, which gave her a chance to vent her anger. Slap! A heavy slap landed on Tao Zi's face. Tao Zi staggered, covered her face, and fell to the ground. Bold servant, you actually dared to bump into me. Mu Ying vented all her anger on Tao Zi, and she didn't forget to kick Tao Zi twice. Tao Zi was a maid who knew the rules of the palace, so her first reaction was to kneel down and beg for mercy. Miss Mu, please forgive me, Miss Mu. Although there weren't many people in the harem, there were quite a few rules. After the Mu sisters entered the palace, the maids and eunuchs had all seen their portraits, so they didn't forget to greet them when they met in the palace. But Tao Zi never thought that this big sister Mu Ying, who was as beautiful as a flower, would be such a violent person. Forgive me. Mu Ying gave a cold look before kicking her shoulder with her right foot. Do I have to forgive you just because you want me to? Unhumph. Tao Zi gave a grunt from the pain, but she gritted her teeth and didn't dare say anything. Anyone who had been in the palace for over a year knew that the Mu sisters were more important than anyone else in the eyes of the emperor. Even if he was busy, he would go to the Cherry Blossom Palace every day. Everyone knew that he did it for Mu Tian Tian, or it could be said that it was for that face that looked the same as the previous empress. Mu Ying saw that she didn't speak and felt that the anger in her heart couldn't be vented, making her even more annoyed. In the next second, she raised her right hand and was about to give Peach another slap. A dignified voice rang out and made her stop in midair. Stop! Shi Jin looked up and narrowed her eyes to look at Mu Ying in front of her. Such courage. You actually dare move against this one's maid. Empress. Tao Zi covered her face and choked up, as tears fell down in an aggrieved manner. Mu Ying was surprised, but she knew who this person was. The only concubine in this large harem, Shi Jin. Ying greets concubine Shi. She knit her brows in an unwilling manner, but she still gave a bow. Although this bow was a bit casual, in Mu Ying's eyes, although Shi Jin was the only concubine in the harem, Feng Xize rarely went to her. Although she didn't know why, she could guess that this concubine wasn't favored. You know that this one is an empress. Shi Jin was surprised before flicking her sleeve. Then this one asks, "What is your status in the palace that you dare to hit my maid?" Her voice was neither soft nor heavy, but it carried an indescribable majesty. After all, Shi Jin knew better than anyone that Mu Yingying's position in the palace was just a substitute. In Feng Shi Jin's heart, Shi Jin, Shi Jin. Empress, she's to she. Mu Yingying didn't dare to bite her lips. She raised her head arrogantly and said, "I am someone who was personally welcomed into the palace by the emperor. Could it be that you're not clear on why the emperor brought you into the palace?" Shi Jin narrowed her cold eyes and glared at her. "Could it be that you want this one to tell you?" Shi Jin didn't have time to care about Mu Yingying, because she knew that no matter how many nation-collapsing Mu Yingyings there were in this world, it was impossible for anyone to enter Feng Xizue's heart. Chapter 1347. Pa! There was a clear slap that landed on Mu Yingying's face, cutting her off. Shi Jin's slap was very strong, but Mu Yingying didn't move at all. Rather, she looked at her with eyes filled with killing intent. "I've heard that you know martial arts, and you set up a martial art competition before entering the palace." Shi Jin gave a cold snort. "If you're not convinced, you can fight back. If the emperor learns of this, will you be the one to die, or me?" In Feng Xizue's heart, there was no one in this world who could surpass Luo Qingchen. But that didn't mean that a girl who had mysteriously appeared could climb over her head. Even if she and Feng Xizue weren't lovers, they were still gentlemen. After being friends for so many years, even if she knew Mu Yingying who looked the same as Luo Qingchen, she believed that he wouldn't hurt her. Mu Yingying heard this, and she couldn't help trembling. After a while, she pursed her lips and said, "Concubine Shi's lesson is right. Ying has indeed crossed the line." She had to endure. Cross the line? Shi Jin gave a cold laugh as a trace of pain appeared in her eyes. "If you didn't cross the line, could it be that you don't know that your existence is dispensable?" "You? What do you mean?" Mu Yingying took a deep breath. Although her eyes were sharp, she could see that Shi Jin's words had hit her sore spot. Indeed, she was her little sister's accessory. Even entering the palace was because of her little sister. Even now, she didn't understand why this was. She was clearly talented and beautiful, but why did the emperor only have eyes for her little sister and wasn't even willing to look at her? Shi Jin's lips curled into a faint smile as she said with a slight nod, "It can't be that you don't know that the emperor doesn't like your little sister, but rather her face." Without knowing why, Shi Jin's heart felt very refreshed when she said this. Facing someone as arrogant as Mu Yingying, if she didn't pour a bucket of cold water on her, she wouldn't be happy. "Face!" Mu Yingying knit her brows and shook her head in a confused manner. "What do you mean? Could it be that the emperor only liked her younger sister's face?" Although her younger sister was pretty, she was still a fool. Anyone with a brain would choose her, who was both talented and beautiful, and not someone who was mentally retarded. "Looks like you really don't know." Shi Jin waved her right hand, and her moving eyes slightly moved as she said, "Your little sister is almost the same as the previous empress." Boom! At this moment, Mu Yingying's world was like a bolt from the blue. She finally solved the mystery that had been in her heart for many days, but she felt even more powerless. She originally thought that even if the emperor was interested in her younger sister's appearance, it was at most because she was beautiful. However, she shared the same father and mother as her younger sister, so she had the same beauty as her younger sister. But what she had, her sister didn't. Over time, she would definitely be able to squeeze out her younger sister and become the emperor's favorite. But now that Shi Jin told her this reason, it made her heart skip a beat. It was especially cold. When she came back to her senses, Shi Jin had already disappeared into the end of the royal garden. She tightly clenched her fist and muttered through gritted teeth, "No, it can't be like this. It definitely can't be like this." She who always shined couldn't live in the shadow of a fool. She had to take back everything that belonged to her. Chapter 1348. After all, she looked a bit similar to her little sister. Right, there was also Shi Jin. This person's existence was also an eyesore. so she might as well kill two birds with one stone. Her pair of phoenix eyes revealed a sinister look, and the corners of her mouth curved into an extremely terrifying smile. At the same time, in Jade Mountain, after the girl in the ice coffin reacted to the outside world for the first time, she finally opened her eyes on a certain morning. Chun, early in the morning. It seemed like her lucky time of the day was in the morning. See, she gave a slight shiver as she said, "So cold. You're already like this, and you're still afraid of the cold." The sound of the stone wall opening came into her ears, followed by Yin Xiu's excited voice. She rubbed her temples and didn't ask Yin Xiu anything. Rather, she talked to the system first. System, 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 are you still there? System is always here. I'm still alive. The host can feel the cold, so of course you're still alive. Not to mention that if the host died, you would appear in the chaos space. The system spread its non-existent hands, indicating that the host's intelligence had deteriorated a bit. Why aren't you saying anything? Yin Xiu knit his brows in worry. It can't be that you're frozen, right? Actually, even for a genius doctor like Yin Xiu, who is unparalleled in medicine and poison, he wasn't certain if he could save Luo Qingchun. After all, there were still people who had taken the medicine he gave her. He was also gambling, so he couldn't make any promises. Naturally, that included Feng Sizue. You're the fool. Luo Qingchun gave a shiver before stretching her arms and legs. She came out of the ice coffin and asked, "How long have I been asleep?" "A year." "Ah." The next second, she suddenly felt dizzy and couldn't stand properly. She sat down on the steps and asked, "A year? You wouldn't be teasing me, right?" Yin Xiu helplessly shook his head. "It's a miracle that you're still alive. You're still being picky." Yin Xiu was clearly very happy. One was because Luo Qingchun was awake, and two was because his medical skills had improved. Luo Qingchun heard this, and her heart skipped a beat. Pursing her lips, she looked up and asked, "Then, is he still alive?" "I don't know." Yin Xiu shrugged and said, "You can go back to Chang and take a look yourself." "Are you isolated from the world?" Luo Qingchun looked around and suddenly thought of this question. Yin Xiu shook his head and said, "I'm not completely cut off from the world, but I haven't been concerned about Chang'an for a long time. But I haven't heard any rumors about a new emperor ascending the throne. He should still be alive. Then I may have to say goodbye to you." Luo Qingchun's eyebrows moved slightly, and she went straight to the point. A year had already passed. She didn't want to waste any more time. "I've already prepared travel expenses and clothes for you a few days ago." Yin Xiu nodded gently and said, "I look forward to your reunion." "Thank you." She got up slightly and brushed past him. She turned her eyes to him and asked, "Why did you go through so much trouble to save me?" Hearing this, Yin Xiu waved his fan and smiled faintly. "Because of the last sentence you said. I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid that it'll be too lonely." It was probably because of these words that made him want to do everything he could to save her, because he also wanted to see what it would be like when they reunited. Chapter 1349. Blue Jade Mountain was a very remote place. After leaving the ice room, they walked for around an hour before arriving at a very clean and shabby temple. Yin Xiu followed her and told her what happened this year, but it wasn't very complete. After all, Blue Jade Mountain was very remote, so most of it was from the little monks that went to the small market. Feng Xingyu died very miserably. After a month of being dismembered, there wasn't a single piece of flesh on his body that wasn't broken. He was tortured to the point of taking his last breath. As for the others, they didn't have good endings either. Standing in the inner room of the temple, Yin Xiu had prepared clothes and money for her on the table. She casually picked up the wooden comb that he had carefully prepared and walked towards the mirror. But the closer she came to the mirror, the more fear she felt in her heart. Where her face was completely reflected in the bronze mirror, an ear-piercing scream resounded through the entire temple. Ah, endless, pitiful cries. "What is it?" Yin Xiu quickly came in and looked at her as he said, "What happened? In this remote Blue Jade Mountain, there shouldn't be any thieves. Could it be a mouse?" Luo Qingchun's eyes opened wide as she pointed at her face and said, This. What is the meaning of this? How did I become like this?" Yin Xiu was a bit surprised before his lips curled into a faint curve as he said, "You becoming like this isn't bad." "Not bad." Luo Qingshun forcefully pinched her face as she looked at Yin Xiu and said, "Divine Dr. Yin, may I ask if this face, is it similar to my original face?" Yin Xiu carefully looked it over before raising a brow and saying, "It really is like a different person. What's going on here?" Her clear eyes narrowed. Seeing Yin Xiu's unsurprised look, she could guess that the change in her face was within his expectations. "Because I used a drug that could enter the bloodstream in the shortest amount of time," Yin Xiu said with a shrug. "You have to know that medicine is 30% poison. Not to mention poison, it's at least 70% poison." But stop complaining. Before Luo Qingshan could finish her sentence, Yin Xiu interrupted her. "You have a pretty face. I don't think it's worse than Luo Qingshan. When this drug was tested on mice, the mice were all disfigured." Yin Xiu expressed that he was right. After all, before he decided to give Luo Qingshan this medicine, he was prepared for her to turn into a monster. "But—" she blinked her eyes and pursed her lips. "You should have told me earlier. I was scared out of my wits when I saw the mirror." After all, the difference between this face and her original face was definitely not that of a biological sister, but rather that of a cousin. She originally thought that Yin Xiu would casually explain with a smile, but she didn't expect that he pretended to look at her with a serious face and said, "Did you ask me?" If you ask me, I will definitely tell you." "It's getting late. Let's get on our way." F***ck. Luo Qingshun, who was frequently interrupted, couldn't help but curse. Yin Xiu was obviously stunned. He scratched his head and said, "Miss Luo, what do you mean?" Luo Qingshun closed her eyes and exhaled deeply. "Exactly what I meant." Chapter 1350. It would be strange if you understood. Luo Qingshun's lips curled into a cold smile. "Goodbye, goodbye. We won't meet again." As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingshun walked out the door. Yin Xiu's nagging came from behind her. "You have to eat the medicine in the bag." She just waved her hand and didn't turn around. The sun was just right, and her lips curled as she muttered, "Thank you for saving my life." Imperial Palace, Cherry Blossom Hall. In the afternoon, Mu Tian Tian was sleeping soundly. Mu Ying came into the room and patted her shoulder. "Little sister, get up. Be good and drink the medicine. Then help big sister bring the things in the basket to the willful hall for concubine Shi. All right?" Mu Tian Tian rubbed her eyes and softly said, "Oh." She drank all the medicine that Mu Ying gave her. It was probably because the winter weather was too cold that Mu Tian Tian had a bit of a cold. Mu Ying had been taking care of her the entire time, feeding her medicine that was prescribed by the imperial doctor. Only she had added a bit of other things. She had already prepared this before entering the palace, but she never thought that she would use it on her little sister. In the depths of the harem, one had to be on guard against people. Since the willful hall wasn't far from the Cherry Blossom Hall, they just needed to pass through a garden. Mu Tian Tian wasn't a fool. At least she could understand the words "keep going." At this time, Mu Ying had to find Feng Sizue. There were some things that had to be caught to kill two birds with one stone. At the door of the imperial study, Eunuch Li stopped her. "The emperor is resting. Miss Mu can tell this old servant if you need anything." She rubbed her nose, and tears instantly flashed in her eyes. She sobbed, "My little sister is gone." Hearing the word "little sister," Eunuch Li's expression changed. After being with Feng Sizue for so long, naturally he knew that Miss Mu Ying had entered the palace because of her little sister. "Miss Mu, please wait a bit. This old servant will report this." As soon as his voice fell, he headed into the imperial study. After a while, Feng Sizue quickly came out. He was wearing a sky-blue robe, and the purple gold crown on his head was dazzling. At that moment, Mu Ying saw God. She firmly believed that she did not do it, and she would never regret it. When did she disappear? Feng Sizue knit his brows as a faint sparkle appeared in his eyes. This feeling was very strange. His heart did not waver in the slightest, and his heart did not even skip half a beat, but that face flashed through his mind. That face he could not lose. After all, he only had that face left now. At noon, I searched the surroundings, but I couldn't find him at all. Mu Ying frowned and said with trembling hands, "We all fell asleep, but when I woke up, I found that she was gone." The pastries on the table were also gone. In order for this plan to succeed in one fell swoop, this was not the first time she had Mu Tian bring pastries to the willful hall, but she had calculated the time very accurately. After all, Shi Jin had gone to the temple 2 days ago and wasn't in the palace. Therefore, Mu Tian could only turn back. Such a scene was more or less seen by the palace maids who came and went. After all, in the past 2 days, she had already heard some rumors. She was more than happy to listen to these mutterings. Chapter 1351. In less than half an hour, Eunuch Li quickly came back to report. There have been several maids who have seen Miss Mu Tian going to concubine, she's willful palace. Concubine, she... Mu Ying knit her brows and shook her head as she muttered, "Impossible. Tian doesn't know what concubine she is. How could she? Then let's go to the willful palace." Feng Size narrowed his cold eyes and walked into the snow with his hands crossed. Mu Ying followed behind him, and after calculating the time, she looked down at the powder in her right hand, and her lips curled into a beautiful curve. Inside the willful palace, Tao Zi saw that her expression wasn't good, so she brewed a pot of tea for her to sit in the hall. After all, she had been given a cold look by her big sister a few days ago, and a fool had come by herself today. Although she wasn't neglecting her, she was too lazy to flatter her. "My concubine is asleep." Tao Zi looked at her and softly said, "My concubine has been on a diet recently. You can take these pastries back." Although she didn't know why this fool suddenly came, wanting to apologize to her concubine with pastries, it really was shameful. Didn't the emperor give her many things, and she didn't even know how to deal with the servants? But it wasn't strange since she was a fool. It was normal that she didn't understand. Thinking of this, Tao Zi saw that she was a bit depressed and continued, "If Miss Mu is willing to wait, this servant will report to my concubine." All right. Mu Tian revealed a sweet smile, but her face was already a bit pale. After a while, Shi Jin came out of the room. The moment she saw Mu Tian, her body unconsciously froze. There were always people who said that Mu Tian looked the same as her, but seeing her today, it really was the same. But her smile was very bright, and that deceased person never had such a bright smile. "Is the tea good?" Shi Jin was prepared to walk towards Mu Tian, but she didn't expect her expression to freeze and her face to turn pale. She held her chest in pain as she said, "It hurts. It hurts. Tian hurts. It hurts, Hong Long." She fell out of the chair. With a loud sound, Feng Sizue's group that wasn't walking that fast turned in the direction of the sound and walked into the willful palace. Shi Jin was surprised and took a step back in a panic. She looked at Tao Zi beside her, and Tao Zi shook her head in a panic. "Concubine, this servant doesn't know." Punk. Everything happened at just the right time. When the door to the willful palace opened and Eunuch Li exclaimed, Mu Ying rushed up and hugged Mu Tian. Little sister. The moment she hugged Mu Tian, she gently flicked the powder under her fingernails into the teacup on the table. Harming a person is always easier than saving a person, because it only takes an opportunity to harm a person. Tian. However, she still did not regret it. Don't be afraid. Big sister is here." She softly patted her head as she bit her lip. "Those people who hurt you, big sister will definitely not let them off." Chapter 1352. Quickly, summon the imperial doctor. Feng Size didn't move forward. He just looked at the face that had turned pale, and there was a suffocating feeling. Why did the heavens have to be so cruel to him, even taking away his last bit of thought? He didn't charge forward because he knew that even if this person looked like Luo Qingshun, it wasn't her. Because it wasn't her, he would always look at her from afar and admire her face, but he would never touch her. 2 hours later, the imperial doctor shook his head and kneeled on the ground. Reporting to the emperor, Miss Mu is powerless to reverse the situation. No. A painful scream echoed throughout the entire Cherry Blossom Palace. Mu Ying wanted to charge forward and kill Shi Jin like crazy, but she was stopped by Eunuch Li. Feng Xize tightly knit his brows, and there wasn't a single bit of light in his deep eyes. He slowly turned around and coldly asked Shi Jin, "What did you feed her?" "You." Shi Jin almost couldn't stand still as she looked at Feng Xize. "The emperor doesn't believe this concubine. Something happened to her in your palace. Shouldn't you give an explanation?" Feng Xize narrowed his cold eyes, although he didn't come to a conclusion. But his violent personality didn't allow him to think about anything. He just needed a result. "You're the one who killed my little sister." Mu Ying's eyes were like a broken string of pearls, falling down one by one. Although at this moment, her heart was more excited than ever. It was like a flower in the dark night, blooming in an unknown place. This concubine didn't. Shi Jin bit her lip as her eyes misted over. "Why would this concubine harm her?" "Because you're jealous of my little sister." Mu Ying angrily roared out. "Although she is a fool, she is a kind girl. I told her last time that I offended you. She must have taken it to heart." "Don't slander me." Tao Zi suddenly kneeled down and kowtowed. "Emperor, you mustn't wrong the Empress. The Empress didn't invite the Mu sisters to the Willful Hall. There must be a secret. My younger sister died in your palace. What other secrets do you have?" Mu Ying directly replied, her eyes filled with ruthlessness. "Killing two birds with one stone. Since she had already done it, she had to do it thoroughly. You said that her younger sister was poisoned in our palace. What evidence do you have?" Taozi bit her lip and replied fearlessly, Reporting to the emperor." Feng Sizue's personal guard fan came in and cupped his hands. "This lowly one has given Miss Mu's tea to the imperial doctor." He paused before looking at Shi Jin and saying, after verification, "The poison in the tea is the same as the poison in Miss Mu's body. How is this possible?" Taozi collapsed to the ground, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. "Impossible, impossible!" In the next second, Mu Ying gave a cold laugh and said without any warmth in her voice, "Now that the evidence is conclusive, I wonder what imperial concubine she has to say." She suddenly kneeled down and kowtowed to Feng Sizu. "I beg the emperor to make a decision for Tian Tian." At that moment, her lips couldn't help curling into a beautiful curve. Her plan had succeeded, and she had achieved all her goals. Now there was no longer a woman that Feng Sizue liked in the palace. There was only her left. Chapter 1353. Someone come. Feng Sizue's cold eyes slowly fell onto Shi Jin, and the chill in his eyes almost froze her. He softly said, "Take down concubine Shi and lock her up for now. Leave the rest to the court." Guard Fan turned to look at Shi Jin. "I've offended the Empress." "Don't touch me." Shi Jin's eyes trembled as she said in a tearful voice, "We've been friends for 10 years. If I wanted to harm you, I would have killed Luo Qinshan back then and not a substitute." As soon as her voice fell, she turned to leave the Cherry Blossom Hall. Who was right and who was wrong suddenly didn't seem that important. Therefore, Feng Sizue had already blinded his eyes and his heart. It had to be said, when the words Luo Qinshan came from Shi Jin's mouth, he felt his breathing stop and his heart skip a beat. Shi Jin was right, but that face was the only thing keeping him alive. He couldn't lose it again. Thinking of this, Feng Size turned to the imperial doctor on the side. "Wash her clean, put on makeup, and seal her in an ice coffin." The imperial doctor was surprised. He thought that this girl in front of him was the girl that the emperor loved. He loved her so much that he took down concubine, Shi, and sent her to the court. But he never thought that this stubborn emperor's love wouldn't let this girl rest in peace. Rather, he wanted to protect her face. At the same time, Luo Qinshan finally arrived in Long Peace City. It had to be said, the distance between Clear Jade Mountain and Long Peace City couldn't be described with just the word far. It was clearly very, very far. Of course, this was mainly due to the lack of transportation in ancient times. If she had a Maserati a few days ago, she would have been able to reach Long Peace City in an hour from Clear Jade Mountain. Long Peace City didn't seem to have changed. There were peddlers on the streets, children holding candied haws, and laughter filled the air. Luo Qingchun found a good inn to stay in. Yin Xiu wasn't stingy with her, giving her enough traveling expenses. Waiter, sir, what do you need? A pot of tea, a few side dishes, and some fruits. All right, please wait a moment. She held the moon glass fan in her hand and casually played with it while listening to the gossip of the people at the next table. Actually, she didn't really care about this matter. However, when he heard the words imperial concubine, he couldn't help but perk up his ears. Have you heard? It's about imperial concubine, she. Keep your voice down. Do you not want her head anymore? Didn't I speak very softly? I heard that even the prime minister was unable to protect imperial concubine, she. Is it true that she harmed that silly girl from the Mu family? Really? I heard from the people in the palace that the evidence is conclusive. TSK, I didn't expect this. She's such a vicious person. In an instant, there were two voices that sounded at the same time. They came from Luo Qingchun and, little boy. What nonsense are you talking about? What nonsense are you talking about? Although it wasn't the same word for word, the meaning was the same. The people at the next table who were used to eating were stunned by the roar. Before they finished eating, they put down their silver and ran away. Luo Qingchun looked in the direction of the little boy and raised an eyebrow. Who are you to speak up for imperial concubine, she? Chapter 1354. She is my big sister. Naturally, I'm speaking up for her. Shili didn't hide it. He came to her table and poured himself a pot of tea. Who are you and why are you speaking up for my big sister? This made Luo Qingchun feel a bit awkward. She felt like she was displaying her slight skill in front of an expert. Although this kind of feeling was somewhat inappropriate to describe, it could express her current state of mind at this moment. After all, she and Shi Jin had only met by chance, and this person in front of her was her little brother. Luo Qingchun said in a daze, old friend. Actually, she felt that she and Shi Jin could be considered rivals in love. After all, when she begged her to see Feng Sizue that day in the snow, she could clearly feel that it wasn't as simple as a gentleman's gaze. Old friend? Shili looked over her, completely unfamiliar with her. So what if I'm an old friend? Luo Qingchun said with a shrug. What did they mean by the court of justice? You're my big sister's old friend, and you actually don't know what happened to her. Shili pursed his lips. It's better to just watch the show. You. Luo Qingchun rolled her eyes at the little boy in front of her. Don't tell me if you want to. After all, she didn't come back to find Shi Jin. Therefore, she wasn't that interested in what happened. When she was about to leave, Shili called out to her, You're leaving before the dishes are served. I'm afraid that if I look at you too much, I won't be able to eat dinner. Luo Qingchun thought that she was clearly standing on his big sister's side, but this little brat didn't know how to be grateful at all. Don't. Shili pulled on her sleeve. I'll apologize to you. After all, those people had said this about his big sister, and the girl in front of him had stood up for her. Luo Qingchun waved her moon glass fan and slowly sat down. The cause, the process, and the result. It's about your big sister. Oh. Shili thought for a bit before saying, I'm not too clear on the cause and process. I only heard that she killed a girl that the emperor favored very much. What? In the next second, a high-pitched two words attracted everyone's attention. Even Shili looked at her in a daze, not understanding why she was so excited. Oh my God, are you kidding me? She had only been gone for a year, and Feng Sizue already had a girl that he cared about? Isn't this a little too fast? Oh no, perhaps it should be said that this was too much. You, don't be agitated. Shili quickly explained, my big sister definitely didn't kill that girl, don't worry. Ahem. Luo Qingchun cleared her throat and looked up. What do you mean by a very important girl? Shili was surprised before telling Luo Qingchun everything about Mu Tian. After hearing the whole story, she fell silent. She lowered her eyes slightly, and her long eyelashes fluttered. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. You seem very sad. Shili looked at her with a bit of confusion. He suddenly felt that she was very special after being quiet. It was like she was a completely different person from before. Luo Qingshun had already adjusted her emotions when she looked up. Chapter 1355. Thank you for believing in my big sister. No, it's not that I believe. Luo Qingshun's lips curled slightly. It's that your big sister is very clear on what kind of meaning Mu Tian Tian has to the emperor. It was just a face. She didn't need to do this kind of thing. If she was that jealous of that face, she wouldn't have knelt in the snow and said those words to her. No matter what kind of feeling Shi Jin had for Feng Zue, she was 100% certain that Mu Tian Tian's matter was framed. You, guest, your side dishes are here. The waiter put down the plates one by one. These are the fruits you wanted. Thank you. Luo Qingshun politely thanked him before picking up her chopsticks to taste the food on the table while asking, "Right? I still haven't asked what your name is." He picked up a pear from the table and looked at it. "This one is Shili pear?" Luo Qingshun looked at the pear in his hand, and her lips curled into a cold smile. Shili was stunned by Luo Qingshun's smile, but he still asked with a smile, "May I ask this miss name?" Luo Qingshun pointed at another fruit on the plate. "Orange." "Orange?" "Unhumph." She pursed her lips into a smile. "Aren't you called pear? What's wrong with being called orange?" "Chunzi." "Orange. There's nothing wrong with that. Can't Luo Qingshun's nickname be Chunzi?" Shili was a bit speechless, but he immediately said, "I'm very happy to meet you." "Me too," she said while eating, "but can we save the pleasantries?" The most important thing right now is to think of a way to save your big sister." Luo Qingshun picked up a piece of braised pork and put it in her mouth. After all, she has lived a luxurious life since she was young. She definitely can't get used to living in the Justice Temple. "To be honest, I came back this time for this matter." Shili clenched his fists. "I'll be entering the palace tomorrow morning to see the emperor and help my big sister." He was originally guarding the border. If it wasn't for the fact that his father was already old and bedridden, he wouldn't have let his sister suffer such grievances. "You want to enter the palace?" Luo Qingshun raised her eyebrows slightly, a faint light flashing through her clear eyes. Actually, if she wanted to enter the palace to find Feng Zue, the most direct method was to use teleportation. But this was a risky business, not mentioning the possibility of being beaten to death before seeing Feng Zue. The other thing was that the collapsed world was even more terrifying than being beaten to death. The system had reminded her before that she could not abuse her powers in any plane, especially in a plane without powers, because there was a chance that the plane would collapse, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Luo Qingshun had never abused her ability unless it was an emergency, regardless of whether it was the ability to exchange for points or the ability that she already had. Since Shili could bring her into the palace, it would save her a lot of unnecessary risks. "Yes," Shili said with a nod. "I'll go to the Justice Temple this afternoon to see my big sister first." After all, he had to understand the cause and effect, so he could find a way to absolve Shi Jin after entering the palace. "I'll go with you." Luo Qingshun took a sip of tea before narrowing her eyes. "But the premise is, you have to trust me." "Naturally, I trust you." Shili was surprised, never thinking that the girl in front of him would be willing to go with him. After all, no one wanted to have anything to do with the Shi family. Chapter 1356. Inside the court, there was a musty smell in the air. Although Shili had taken care of everything, the guards of the court still didn't look good. "You are looking after the criminal who caused the death of the emperor's beloved. Time is limited. If you want to talk, come out quickly." The guard shook the silver in his hand and looked at the subordinate beside him. "Let them in." Hearing the words beloved, Luo Qingshun couldn't help rolling her eyes at him. Shi Jin was locked in the innermost cell that was covered in moss and cobwebs. Luo Qingshun knit her brows as her heart couldn't help trembling. Just what had happened in the past year that made Feng Zue this obsessed with a face? He was so obsessed that he locked up Shi Jin, who had been his friend for 10 years. Just what was in his head? Incapable ruler. Shili muttered as he walked forward. "What?" Luo Qingshun followed behind him and pursed her lips. "Your big sister's evidence is conclusive. How is the emperor an incapable ruler? Everyone had someone they wanted to protect in their heart. She wasn't an exception. Even if the most important thing right now was to clear Shi Jin's name She couldn't bear to hear others say bad things about Feng Sizue. How was he not an incapable ruler? Shili heard this, and his back straightened. He stopped and turned to say, he would rather believe a pair of sisters who haven't been in the palace for long than my big sister who has been with him for 10 years. Blinded by lust, isn't this incapable ruler? Shili was clearly very angry, since his big sister, who didn't need to worry about food and clothing since she was young, was locked up in this dark and cold prison. He wasn't willing. What a joke! Luo Qingshun narrowed her cold eyes as she seriously looked at him word for word. If it wasn't for the emperor back then, your big sister would have been buried with the Ningyuan army general. You? Shili was a bit speechless as he could see a bit of anger in her eyes. But he didn't know why she was angry. What about me? Luo Qingshun looked up. You also said that there was conclusive evidence in front of everyone. What do you want the emperor to do? Favor a murderer like your big sister? My big sister didn't kill anyone. Shili bit his lip as he firmly said each word. You saw it? Luo Qingshun gave a shrug as her eyes trembled. No one saw who poisoned her, and your big sister can only become the target of everyone. Feng, the emperor didn't do anything wrong. Could it be that you want the ruler of a country to protect her in front of his subjects? After a while, there was silence. Her powerful words made Shili unable to refute it all. When he turned around, he softly said, You really are speaking up for him. She Li's, she SSS is she Li's, she's the Luo Qingshun could only hear his soft words. I just don't like hearing you praise him like this. One was his big sister, and the other was someone he trusted the first time they met, but they were both speaking up for a ruthless emperor. Big sister, Shili, who walked in front, stood in front of the innermost cell and softly called out. Shi Jin in the cell was stunned. She slowly turned around and tentatively asked, Is it Xiaoli? It's me, big sister. Chapter 1357. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It really wasn't me. She kept crying. All the calmness and self-control she had when she saw her loved ones had completely disappeared. Shi Jin thought that she could always be this calm. Even if she died, she would have a clear conscience. But when she saw Shi Li, she still felt aggrieved. I know. Shi Li reached out his hand, and his slender fingers softly wiped the tears on her face. Big sister, don't cry. I definitely won't let you suffer this grievance. All right. Luo Qingshun rubbed her temples and waved her hand. Now isn't the time to cry. Shi Jin heard this and found Luo Qingshun's figure in the dim light. She was wearing a moonlight brocade robe that was very elegant, but it gave people a strange feeling. This is... Shi Jin immediately recovered her normal calm and slightly knit her brows. I lost just now. You don't know each other? Shili was surprised. He looked at Luo Qingshun in disbelief and said, Didn't you say that you were my big sister's old friend? Luo Qingshun was a bit awkward at that moment. She cleared her throat and said, This matter can't be explained in a short period of time. In short, I'm here to help you. Help me? Shi Jin's misty eyes blinked as she said, The person who can help me in this world is already dead. In this world, other than Luo Qingshun, there was no one else who could influence Feng Sizue's decision. That man was already paranoid to a terrifying level. Perhaps there was only that face left in his heart, that face that was like a puppet. Don't be this pessimistic. She softly bit her lip and tapped the moon glass fan in her right hand a few times with her left hand. There will be a path when we reach the mountain. We'll be going to the palace tomorrow, so you can simply tell us what happened. Shi Jin knit her brows and looked at Shi Li with sparkling eyes. Shi Li nodded. She told him everything that had happened. The basic content was no different from what the crowd was discussing. The only difference was Shi Jin wasn't in the palace a few days ago. So how could Mu Tian coincidentally go to the Willful Hall on the day she came back? After coming out of the Supreme Court, Luo Qingshun didn't say anything, and Shili didn't seem to be in a good mood. At dusk, there were few people on the streets of Chang, and Luo Qingshun stopped and said to Shili, How about a cup of wine? He stared blankly for a moment. Seeing her eyes light up, even though he was vexed, he couldn't bear to refuse. After a long while, he gently nodded and said, All right. It was a small tavern with a quiet private room. Luo Qingshun took a sip of wine and said, I have probably guessed how your sister was framed, but really? Shili was surprised. He quickly grabbed her hand and awkwardly let go, as he said, "Don't keep me in suspense. Quickly tell me." I'm afraid that the victim never thought that the person closest to her would harm her. Her right hand tapped the table out of habit. I suspect Mu Ying, but there's no evidence. This definitely wasn't a baseless suspicion. Perhaps others didn't understand Feng Si Zue's harem, but she was very clear on it. Chapter 1358. Similarly, Shijin had been in the Willful Hall for many years, and no one had harmed her. As soon as the two sisters entered the palace, one of them died. Putting aside family ties, logically speaking, Mu Ying was the most likely. Shili was stunned as he looked at her in disbelief, but that is her blood-related little sister. So what if she's a little sister? Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and slowly drank the wine in her cup. Before investigating the truth, you have to know the personality of the Mu family's two sisters. Personality? After we came out of the Supreme Court, we wandered the streets of Chang'an City, and everyone was discussing this matter. Didn't you hear it? Luo Qingshun looked up and saw Shi Li's stunned appearance. She suddenly wanted to throw the wine jar on the table at him. Why was this child so brainless? How could I have this kind of thought? The more important it is, the more you have to have this kind of thought. Luo Qingshun waved her fan. Could it be that you're planning on hugging the phone? Emperor tomorrow, when you see him, crying that my big sister was wronged. Shili heard Luo Qingshun say this, and suddenly felt a bit uncertain. He scratched his head as he looked at her. Then what do we do? When we were on the streets of Chang'an City, I gathered all the gossip and understood some important things. Luo Qingshun raised a brow. Do you want to hear it? Of course. Cool. She cleared her throat and said, "Fill up the wine and I'll tell you." After that, Shili filled up the empty wine cup on Luo Qingshun's table like a little follower, looking at her like he was ready to listen. The Mu family's two sisters were looking for a groom in Chang'an City. The two sisters were both nation-collapsing beauties, but the little sister who wasn't that smart became an accessory. Luo Qingshun looked at her and asked, "An accessory should mean that she was married off at the same time. As for whether she was a concubine or a maid, I didn't hear the crowd. The citizens mention it." You mean Mu Ying, who was originally the main character, suddenly became an accessory for the idiot's younger sister. Do you think her arrogant heart won't be twisted? Is that why she killed her sister, killing two birds with one stone? Her thoughts can be said to be quite meticulous. It had to be said that if this was a war in the harem, Mu Ying was very successful in this fight. Shi Jin didn't even have a chance to fight back. Even she might not be able to guarantee 100% victory against such a woman. After all, a person whose mind was so twisted that he could even kill his own sister had already reached a perverted stage. What should we do next? What's that saying again? Luo Qingshun's clear eyes flashed with a faint light. She looked at him and said, "If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. Since we don't have any evidence, let her give herself away. As the saying goes, the closer you are to success, the more likely you are to lose everything." Mu Ying must be very excited in the palace right now. She would definitely try her best to stabilize her position in the palace. The next morning, Luo Qingshun went to the palace with Shi Li to see the emperor. When she stood at the gate of the Black Tortoise Gate, she was a bit nervous. Time flew by, but to her, it was like a golden millet dream. There was a bit of familiarity in the strangeness. This matter should have a result. Chapter 1359. Luo Qingshun had changed into a light blue embroidered dress with a red lipstick, making her look very pure and beautiful. She had entered the palace with Shi Li as Shi Jin's cousin, so uniquely didn't stop them. After all, Shi Li had military exploits on the border. He was a meritorious minister of the Feng dynasty. "You might not be able to go in later. Wait for me at the door," Shi Li whispered in her ear. Luo Qingshun gave a soft nod in response. The palace was still the same palace, but it didn't feel good that the tea was cold after people left. Uniquely arranged for her to stay in the Su Pavilion of the Imperial Garden. This was a place that was very close to the splendid hall. She waved the moon glass fan in her right hand and headed in the direction of the splendid hall. This should be the forbidden area of the palace. Few maids came here, but there wasn't a single leaf in the corridor leading to the splendid hall. It was so clean that it was like someone was cleaning it all the time. This scene couldn't help making her heart ache. There was a figure that slowly came over not far away. Luo Qingshan looked at it and found that it was similar to her original appearance. There were two maids behind Mu Ying. They were the servants that Feng Sizue had given to her and Mu Tian when they entered the Cherry Blossom Hall. Now that Mu Tian was dead, naturally these two people were used by her. Luo Qingshan narrowed her eyes and walked past her like she didn't see anything, pushing open the doors of the splendid hall. "Stop!" One of the maids behind Mu Ying reprimanded. "How bold! Why aren't you greeting Miss Mu?" This girl's voice was a bit sharp, making people feel uncomfortable hearing it. There was a saying, birds of a feather flock together. The kind of master would naturally have the kind of servant. From the personality of a servant, one could guess what kind of master their master was. For example, Mu Ying. Luo Qingshan heard this and slowly stopped. She turned around and said, "Since you call her Miss Mu, why should I greet her?" "You." The maidservant looked at her with some arrogance and said, "Now, our mistress is no different from the imperial concubines in the palace. You should pay your respects." After Luo Qingshan finished listening to her words, the corners of her mouth unconsciously pulled out a faint smile. She could roughly guess why Mu Ying's servant could be so tyrannical. It was probably because even Eunuch Li, who was by the emperor's side, had a bow when he saw her. "Then let's wait for Miss Mu to be conferred the title of imperial consort before coming to put on an act in front of me. Okay?" Her eyes narrowed, and other than a faint hint of disdain in her tone, the rest was ice cold. This time, Mu Ying could not hold it in any longer. "Who are you? Since you dare to speak to me like this, you must be new to the palace." She lifted her fluttering skirt and stepped on her soft-soled hibiscus shoes as she walked in her direction and said, "You've walked into this place, but you may not be able to leave." The splendid hall was a forbidden area in the imperial palace. Even though her restless heart wanted to destroy it, she didn't have the courage to open the door, because she knew that she might touch the main line of a certain ice-cold emperor. And this person who had inexplicably appeared in front of her actually dared to open the door so boldly. Moreover, she was so arrogant and disrespectful to her. Unbearable, bang! In the next second, Luo Qingshan slowly closed the door of the splendid hall. She walked back to the corridor and said, "Did I open it? Do you have proof?" "You." The maidservant behind her instantly called out, "I can testify that you are truly despicable." Chapter 1360. Xiao. Before Luo Qingshan's voice fell, Mu Ying charged at her with a face filled with killing intent. Once a person was nervous, they would be easily excited. Once they were excited, they would easily reveal themselves. Luo Qingshan jumped back and took out the moon glass fan from her sleeve, blocking her attack. Even in the middle of a fight, Luo Qingshan didn't forget to raise a brow. Her lips curled as she said, "What? Are you afraid that I'll say something that you don't dare face in your heart?" After all, she had personally killed her little sister. Even if Mu Ying's heart was twisted, when she heard this from someone else, she would still tremble. "You lowly person, shut up for me." She bit her lip. Her moves had been easily dodged by the other side, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead, looking a bit anxious. Who was this person? Why did she feel an inexplicable sense of panic when she looked into her eyes? It was like all her evil deeds couldn't be hidden in front of her. That feeling of the defenses in her heart being broken layer by layer, it was very uncomfortable. "If I don't shut up, are you planning on killing me to silence me?" After that, Luo Qingshan successfully subdued her. She placed the moon glass fan on her neck and said, "But you have to know that with a single swipe of my hand, you'll be sent to see the king of hell." Who? She took a deep breath and swallowed a mouthful of saliva before saying, "Don't act recklessly. If you kill me, the emperor won't let you off." Now there was no Mu Tian or Shi Jin. She was the person who looked the most like the dead empress of the splendid hall. She was qualified to be the woman he favored. "You're also saying that I'm a lowly person?" She narrowed her eyes, and a faint liguang appeared on her face as she said, "Then if I use my life to exchange for your life, letting all your hard work disappear, wouldn't that feel good?" At that moment, Luo Qingshun could feel Mu Yingying's body tremble. Her body couldn't help trembling. She was afraid. "Don't act recklessly." Mu Yingying took a deep breath and said, "Just who are you?" "Cuckoo." Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and pressed the moon glass fan against her neck even harder. "I'm here to reverse the verdict for Imperial concubine she. Divine detective." As soon as Luo Qingshun's voice fell, a young eunuch came running from not far away. He looked at the formation in front of him and couldn't help but be stunned. Trembling, he said, "This. Don't stutter. Tell this Miss Mu what you heard loudly." The corners of Luo Qingshun's mouth rose slightly, and a look of victory flashed in her eyes. Everything was going according to plan. "Miss Mu, Imperial concubine, she has already entered the palace." His voice continued to tremble, but he still managed to finish his sentence. "His Majesty plans to reopen the case." "What?" Mu Yingying's eyes widened, her face filled with disbelief. She had clearly sent Shi Jin to the court. How could she just come out like this? "No, impossible. It seems like there's been a bit of a change in your meticulous plan." Luo Qingshun took back the moon glass fan and said with a shrug, "It seems like you don't have time to tangle with me. Am I right, Miss Mu?" "You, cuckoo." She held her neck and glared at her while panting before quickly turning to leave. Chapter 1361. But right now, the most important thing for her was Shi Jin. She had to head to the endless hall and stop Shi Jin from overturning the case. The two maids behind her glared at her before quickly leaving with Shi Jin. Luo Qingshun stood there as her lips curled into a beautiful curve. This plan had to go back to 2 hours ago. She had personally taught Shi Li what he should say to overturn the case when he met the emperor. When you meet the emperor, you just have to say 3 things. First, why did Mu Tian bring pastries here? Second, Shi Jin had just returned to the palace that day. How could she meet Mu Tian? Third, who would be stupid enough to kill someone in their own palace and leave evidence behind? Will the emperor let me overturn the case? It's a bit hard. Luo Qingshun slightly knit her brows. After all, these are just guesses. Then what if? What if the emperor doesn't move? After a while, Luo Qingshun's lashes trembled as she said, "Just tell him that during the heavy snow that year, Shi Jin kneeled in the snow and begged the empress to invite her to see you." Luo Qingshun wasn't certain that Feng Zue would overturn the case for Shi Jin, but she dared to guarantee that he would remember what happened in the past. She owed Shi Jin, it was time to pay it back. In the endless hall, Shi Jin was wearing a prisoner's uniform. Her hands were tightly cuffed, and her face looked a bit haggard. Although Shi Li's heart ached when he saw this, at least Shi Jin came out of that dark place, which was a good thing. He had to admit, that girl named Chung really was powerful. The emperor was completely indifferent when he said the 3 days, but when he said the final words, there was a change in his eyes. It was like a pool of stagnant water that had a bit of light. "Your little brother wants to overturn the case for you. But you don't believe this one?" Feng Zue's voice was like a piece of 1,000-year-old ice that couldn't be melted. Every word could chill a person's heart. Shi Jin pursed her lips and said, "Emperor, Shi Jin met you 10 years ago. Drinking and talking, not asking about status." Speaking to this point, she paused. Her bloodshot eyes were like a broken string of pearls. Tears fell from her eyes as she said, "In the past few years in the palace, I've seen His Majesty fall in love with someone. At first, I didn't feel anything, but later on, I felt uncomfortable. But even like this, Shi Jin hopes that the person the emperor likes can see your sincerity and can like you." The fingers of Feng Zue, sitting on the high platform, trembled as his beautiful eyes sparkled as he looked at Shi Jin kneeling at his feet. Memories of the past flashed before his eyes. He had thought that he had long since lost his heart and was living like a living corpse. But at this moment, he could actually feel his own emotions moving. "Emperor." Shili knelt down. Big sister was wrongly accused. As soon as he finished speaking, the voice of a certain young girl flashed through his mind. She suddenly felt that she was a little stupid. She shouldn't have said that. In the next second, he corrected himself. Big sister, she doesn't even dare to kill an ant. She can't kill anyone. You're speaking nonsense. A sharp voice came from the entrance of the endless hall, and everyone turned to look. Mu Ying quickly ran to the front of the hall and knelt down. Emperor, sweetness is too much. If you let this murderer go with just a few words, how could you face my little sister's spirit in heaven? Chapter 1362. You're the murderer. Shili gave a cold snort, directly stating the conclusion that Luo Qingchen had told him. At this moment, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. Not only did this include the maids, eunuchs, and guards, it also included the officials in charge of investigating this case. Shili overturning the case for Shi Jin had caused a stir in the court. After all, Shi Jin was the daughter of the previous prime minister, and although his power was gone, it was still a big case. What nonsense are you saying? Mu Ying trembled as her face turned pale. After all, no one had suspected her of Mu Tian's death. But now, someone had suddenly said such a thing in front of everyone, causing her to panic in her heart. You know what I'm saying better than anyone else. Shili saw her appearance and was even more certain of Luo Qingchen's guess. To be honest, this girl named Cheng was actually this smart. After all, no one would have thought that Mu Ying would kill her own little sister in order to win favor and frame someone else. Shili's words made the officials in charge of investigating the endless hall whisper to each other. If the murderer really is Mu Ying, it can explain why the Gubid would act so quickly. Yes, the Imperial Academy of Medicine said that this kind of poison usually takes a while to act up. But Miss Mu Tian did stay in the willful hall for a while. It was just a bit short. It is because of this that it can't be used as evidence. The Everlasting Palace's whispers were all unfavorable to Mu Ying. This plan of killing two birds with one stone had actually gone wrong at the last moment. I really don't know what you're saying. Mu Ying gritted her teeth as she looked at Feng Sizue with a pitiful look. Emperor, Tian is my little sister. How could I kill her? Why would I do this? The Mu family's wealth came from Tian. If Tian died, the Mu family would decline. So how could I do something like this? You did this because you wanted to replace her. Shili crossed his hands and spoke every word to the point, not wasting any words at all. Of course, all of this was told to him by Luo Qingchen. You're slandering me. Mu Ying pointed at Shili, clearly a bit excited as she said in a trembling voice. You also have an elder sister. Will you personally kill your elder sister? Do you even have a conscience for saying such things just to absolve your sister? When Shi Jin heard this, she gritted her teeth and bowed down. I'm different from you. Ha ha ha. Mu Ying's sharp eyes flashed with a faint light. She suddenly stood up and laughed. Since you think I did it, then I'll take your sister down with me. As soon as her voice fell, she quickly pulled out a sword from the waist of the guard beside her and suddenly stabbed it at Shi Jin. Now, this was her only chance. She was betting that even if Shi Jin died, Feng Sizue wouldn't kill her, because she had a face that was similar to her little sister's, and if she didn't do this, Shi Jin's case would be overturned. Then, she would be finished. Big sister, Shili roared out in shock. Clang! In the next second, two objects flew over from two different directions at the same time, knocking Mu Ying's sword out of her hand. Chapter 1363. Everyone was stunned as their eyes fell onto Luo Qingchen at the same time. The moon glass fan fell at Shi Jin's feet with a quang dang sound. She was a bit surprised as her heart inexplicably skipped a beat. Luo Qingchen stood outside the endless hall as the night breeze blew. Her hair fluttered in the wind, and there was the faint scent of cherry blossoms that filled her nose. The person sitting on the high platform suddenly trembled as his deep eyes fell onto the girl in front of him. She was dressed very plainly and looked like a graceful woman. However, one could feel an imposing aura coming from her body. It was different from the aura of normal people. This feeling was very familiar. It's you again? Mu Ying gritted her teeth and raised a sword in her hand as she said to Luo Qingchen, Someone, quickly take down this assassin. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and revealed a smile of disdain as she calmly looked at Mu Ying. Everyone was stunned as they looked at each other. They slowly pulled out their swords from their sheaths and quickly surrounded Luo Qingshun. Luo Qingshun didn't think that they were idiots. They were just too straightforward. After all, the Mu family's two sisters had received the love of the emperor after entering the palace. Compared to a stranger who had suddenly appeared at the entrance of the endless hall, she naturally had more right to speak. Although Feng Sizue didn't respond, his brows were tightly knit. He hadn't felt this kind of uneasiness and expectation in a long time. This feeling tugged at his heart that had stopped beating for a long time. He took a deep breath and forgot to exhale. His breath stopped, and his heart stopped. Luo Qingshun jumped out and took the sword of the guard closest to her. She narrowed her cold eyes, and a chill came from her body as she softly said, "Come at me. I'll kill one if one comes. I'll kill two if two come." Feng Sizue's world froze at that moment. It was like all the sounds around him didn't exist. His mind kept thinking of that day at the Purple Phoenix Mountain, in front of the python, the words of that girl with clear eyes. Uneasiness, trembling, and fear. Anticipation, anticipation, anticipation. That was most likely what he was feeling at that moment. His slender fingertips were already trembling nonstop, and his pair of eyes had already dimmed to an unfathomable depth. At this moment, a faint trace of Li Guang flashed across his mind. His heart was beating so fast, so fast. "Did you see that?" Mu Ying pointed at her and said, "She is the assassin. Quickly, quickly protect the emperor." Nonsense. Shili wanted to come forward, but he was stopped by a guard who looked at him seriously. "Young Master Shi, the other side's identity is unknown. I brought her here." Shi Li's eyes were a bit anxious, and even his voice was a bit flustered. As expected, Mu Ying turned around and looked at Feng Sizue with a sad look. "Emperor, you have to make a decision for my little sister. They're in cahoots." "AI." Luo Qingshun gave a cold snort as she looked at her with a cold and proud look. "You really aren't suited for pretending to be weak." Shili suddenly kneeled down and cupped his hands. "Emperor, Miss Chung came in with me. She isn't the assassin. She just came to help my big sister reverse the case. I asked the emperor not to blame her." "Reverse the case?" Mu Ying coldly glared at him. "It's called offending when the evidence is conclusive. It's not reversing the case." Chapter 1364. Who told you that the evidence was conclusive? Luo Qingshun gave a shrug as her lips curled into a faint smile. She looked at Mu Ying and said, "For a person like you, how could you throw away the weapon that gave you the greatest sense of security in this palace filled with schemes?" Mu Ying's face turned pale after that. Even the remaining tears on his face stopped falling. His expression instantly stiffened. You're speaking nonsense." Mu Ying wildly shook her head. She was like a panicked little lamb that had been exposed. She could only give a weak retort while trembling. Why? Why was it that the person in front of her could see through her heart? Why was it that she didn't dare look into her eyes? She was just standing outside the endless hall with a sword in her hand, surrounded by a group of guards, but she could release that kind of confident glow. "Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you know better than anyone else in your heart." She raised her eyes slightly, forming an extremely faint arc. "Miss Chung." "Don't speak." Shili slowly turned his head. Feng Sizue looked up and looked at Luo Qingshun without turning, as his slender fingers clenched even tighter. There was an uncomfortable feeling in his heart, like something that belonged to him had been stolen by someone else. Why? What are you in a daze for? Quickly take down this unknown person." Mu Ying was completely flustered at this time. She only had Luo Qingshun in her eyes. In those clear eyes, it was like she had completely seen through her. The guards who had drawn their swords looked at each other in blank dismay, and they couldn't help taking a step back. After all, the ruler on the stage didn't speak for a long time, so they didn't know if they should make a move against Luo Qingshun in front of them. But actually, the mind of the ruler in their eyes was completely blank at this moment. "Are you deaf?" Mu Ying was so nervous that her breathing became a bit fast. Seeing that the guards didn't react, she gritted her teeth and raised the sword in her hand, attacking Luo Qingchen. At this moment, she had to give it her all. She had a strong premonition that she was about to lose her chance. You overestimate yourself. Luo Qingchen coldly snorted. With a beautiful turn, she directly jumped into the everlasting palace. The instant she bent down to pick up the moon glass fan, the sword in her right hand landed firmly on the neck of Mu Yingying, who was charging towards her once again. I heard that you have a martial arts competition to find a spouse? Luo Qingchen shrugged and said with a lazy smile, with your mediocre skills, won't you get married in minutes? She had to admit that Luo Qingchen's mocking words made Mu Yingying's lips tremble. But the more it was like this, the more she could not give up. After racking his brains to kill his own younger sister, how could he give up just like that? She couldn't accept it. She really couldn't accept it. Emperor. Emperor. Her final hopeful eyes fell onto Feng Xize as she bit her lip and said, Save me. Save me. Miss Chung, I'm grateful for everything you did for Shi Jin. After a moment of silence, Shi Jin, kneeling on the ground, slowly said, This matter isn't related to you. Miss doesn't need to get involved in this mess. You're right, I never get involved in this mess. Luo Qingchen said with a faint smile, but giving roses and leaving a lingering fragrance, I'm very happy to do it. Chapter 1365. An old friend. She turned and her eyes trembled slightly as she said, The most important thing right now is to prove concubine Shi's innocence. Innocence? Mu Yingying roared out. She killed my little sister, and she has the face to say she's innocent. I've already said it. She paused before looking at her, with a questioning gaze. The one who killed Mu Tian was you. Good. She tightly bit her lip and raised her head. You said it was me. Take out the evidence. Take it out. Although Mu Yingying pretended to be calm, she was already panicking in her heart. She firmly believed that Luo Qingchen didn't have evidence, and she definitely wouldn't have evidence. Isn't it easy to get evidence? Luo Qingchen gave a soft snort. Search the Cherry Blossom Palace, and you'll naturally get the answer. Mu Yingying looked at Luo Qingchen in a daze. This expression made Luo Qingchen, who wasn't 100% certain, even more certain. No, it could be said that it was a kind of certainty, a conclusion that was inferred from personality analysis. Nonsense. It must be you. Even if there is evidence, it was you who put in ahead of time to absolve Shi Jin. Mu Yingying wildly shook her head in shock. She moved back step by step, moving in Feng Xizue's direction. She could already see her failure. Her eyes were filled with fear, and she had an unwilling look, just like a complete loser. Whether I'm abusing Shi Jin or not, I think Uniquely should know best, Luo Qingchen said. After all, it was Uniquely who searched me when I first entered the palace. Uniquely was surprised. He never thought that he would be called out for such a serious question. All of a sudden, there was a feeling of being overwhelmed by the favor. I can guarantee that she didn't bring anything in. Uniquely cupped his hands and said, This servant can prove that when this miss came in, she didn't have any poison or weapons on her. Eunuch Li's expression didn't change as he directly told the truth. After all, the imperial palace was an important place and not everyone could enter. Even if the emperor had announced it, they still needed to be searched before they could enter. Eunuch Li had a deep impression of the person in front of him. She was probably the woman who left the most impression on him after he was doted on by the emperor. Her looks didn't seem to be as devastatingly beautiful as Luo Qingchen's, but her delicate facial features were so delicate and beautiful. It was as if one would be immersed in her beauty if they took one more look. Mu Yingying still wanted to say something, but she realized that she couldn't say a single word when the words were at the tip of her tongue. She didn't seem to have anything else to say to defend herself. At this moment, it was as if she could be completely seen through as long as she looked up. The two of you, go search the Cherry Blossom Palace. After a while, Feng Xizue looked up and calmed his emotions. He said to the guards surrounding the girl with their swords, Everyone else leave. He had to admit that he was paying attention to the girl's every move. No matter how much he resisted his heart, he couldn't stop this kind of care that was like a surging tide. He looked at her and softly said, "Miss Chung, since you want to reverse the case for Shi Jin, this one wants to hear your thoughts." His voice was very deep, like he was deliberately lowering it, wanting to cover his inexplicable nervousness. But even like this, she could still hear it. Chapter 1366. If you want to see through a person's personality, you can know everything they will do. Luo Qingshun gave a shrug. She waved the moon glass fan in her hand, and her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "She was planning to kill from the beginning." "What?" Shi Jin was surprised and couldn't help calling out in a soft voice. First, if Mu Ying was the murderer, she didn't talk to the outside world after entering the palace. Since she poisoned Mu Tian, it means that she used a special method to bring the poison into the palace. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and revealed the truth bit by bit. There were some things that were already done. Since you didn't regret it, you didn't need to be afraid when it was revealed. Continue. Feng Sizue looked up with an inquisitive look in his eyes. He looked at her clear as water eyes, and it was like he was being led by her thoughts. His blank mind began to turn, and his heart, that had stopped beating, returned to normal. This was because there was a strange feeling that filled his heart. She was her, she was her, she was her. Was she? They had two completely different faces. She died for him. She came against the light. These were two people that shouldn't have intersected, but their figures had overlapped at this moment. Let's ask this person, after killing her little sister, if the poison was destroyed, if another woman appeared in the harem that could threaten her, wouldn't she become a person without any strength? Wah! With a sigh, Shili looked at her with a look of worship. "Miss Chung, you're too smart. You actually used reverse reasoning to lock onto Mu Ying." It had to be said, this girl who came to help her big sister really was admirable. From the arrogance in the beginning to the lazy calmness, it was like she had everything in her control. Of course, when she said her reasoning, he even felt that there was light around her, a dazzling light. After a while, the two guards sent out had a result. "Reporting to your majesty, this subordinate found a bottle of white powder in Miss Mu's bamboo box of the Cherry Blossom Palace Hall." The guard raised the blue and white porcelain bottle over his head with both hands and said, "But this subordinate does not know what this is." "Imperial doctor, he." "Yes, your majesty." In the next second, the imperial physician stepped forward and slowly took the bottle. He gently opened it, and a pungent smell assaulted his nostrils. Imperial physician, he frowned and walked forward to kneel. "Reporting to the emperor, this is the poison that killed Miss Mu Tian. Are you sure?" "Absolutely accurate." In an instant, Mu Ying's entire body softened. She kept sobbing, and her eyes were a little unfocused. In fact, the moment Luo Qingshun said that she was the murderer, even if it was just a suspicion, she knew that she had already lost. After all, she had always thought of herself as a victim. She was the loyal and righteous Mu Ying. She was the older sister who was avenging her younger sister. Miss Chung really is smart. Feng Sizhe narrowed his eyes as he looked at Luo Qingshun. "May I ask what Miss' full name is?" When Luo Qingshun heard this, she looked up and her eyes turned red. "Reporting to the emperor, Miss Cheng's original name is Chung. There's no need for you to say it." Before Shili could finish, Feng Sizue cut him off. He narrowed his eyes, and there was a sparkle in his deep eyes. He was waiting for a miracle, waiting for an answer. It was like he had been waiting from beginning to end, always waiting. Chapter 1367. At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. These three words, which were taboo in the imperial palace, were actually spoken by such an unfamiliar face. This made everyone even more shocked. "The emperor doesn't believe me?" Luo Qingshun looked up with a faint smile as she looked right into his eyes. Shili looked at her with an anxious look as he said in a soft voice, "Don't say it." He would never forgive himself if he let an outsider like her fall into a trap just to reverse the verdict for his sister. Shi Jin's hands trembled. She had the same thoughts as Shili at this moment. The two of them definitely couldn't let others die for them. Feng Sizue was no longer the original Feng Sizue. The current him had already blinded his eyes and heart. He couldn't see good and evil. There was only hatred in his eyes. Then at this time, when this unfamiliar girl mentioned the words Luo Qingshun, there was only one result. That was death. Emperor, everything is Shi Jin's fault with this miss. I believe. The chains of time seemed to have returned to the beginning. When she told him to believe her, he believed her, and now he also believed her. He believed in his obsession. Even if a completely unfamiliar face appeared in front of him, he believed in the answer in his heart. With a guangdang sound, the swords in the hands of the guards fell to the ground. They all knelt down at the same time. This servant deserves death. Mu Ying, who had fallen to the ground, had her eyes wide open as she stared right at his face. Her mouth opened slightly as she desperately shook her head. No. Impossible. How is this possible? In fact, there was nothing wrong with her words. After all, most of the people here were very surprised. They didn't know why Feng Zue, who had been as cold as ice for a year, would say these words. These words were just words to fool people. It wasn't like they hadn't seen what the previous Empress Luo Qingshun looked like. If Mu Tian said that she was Luo Qingshun, many people would believe it. But this person in front of them, based on what? The problem is, it doesn't matter if you think it's impossible. Luo Qingshun walked towards Feng Zizue's stage. There are many people standing around, but not a single person dared to stop her. Firstly, it was because of the current emperor. Secondly, it was because the woman in front of him had an indescribable aura about her. That aura had always existed from the very beginning. Luo Qingshun stood by Feng Zizue's side and playfully took his wrist. After all, as long as the emperor thinks it's possible, there's nothing for you. Luo Qingshun could clearly feel that the person beside her was startled, and the hand she was holding was slowly trembling. Miss Chang cough. Luo Qingshun interrupted him and said, "Please call me Miss Luo Qingshun." After that, her eyes fell onto Shi Jin, and she said, "Then can the emperor let go of concubine Shi?" Feng Zizhe slowly looked to the side, and there was a faint li guang in those bottomless dark eyes as he looked at her. After a while, he slowly raised his right hand and pulled back the strands of hair in front of her ear. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said, "I'll let her go if you say so." At that moment, it was like nothing was important to him. He didn't even need to confirm if the person in front of him was Luo Qingshun, because he knew that the only thing that could make his heart beat this fast was... Chapter 1368. 2 hours later, there was only Feng Zizhe, Luo Qingshun, and the two sisters of the Shi family left in the endless hall. Luo Qingshun thought that Feng Zizue would only leave her alone, but she never thought that he would leave 4 people behind. What was this situation? Shi Jin. He softly took Luo Qingshun's hand and looked at Shi Jin. "This matter has wronged you. This one is very sorry." With just a few words, Shi Li couldn't help taking a step back. It was rumored that the emperor was cruel and as cold as ice. An emperor who had always been self-centered would actually apologize to someone? This matter was too unbelievable for him. Just what kind of charm did the girl standing beside him have that could make Feng Zizue change like this? Shi Jin's reaction was also stunned, but her next reaction was different from her little brother's. She bit her lip and didn't say a word as hot tears fell down. Actually, she still felt wronged in the end. They had been friends for 10 years, but it was as clear as water. The man in front of her wasn't just the emperor, he was the only person she could rely on in this world. But for a face, he didn't hesitate to lock her up in the court of justice. In the past, she even felt that her position in Feng Zizue's heart couldn't compare to Luo Qingshun, but it definitely wouldn't be that far off. But after this, she was very clear in her heart. In Feng Zizue's heart, there was only Luo Qingshun at the top. Everyone else was on the same level. Anything related to her was an unforgivable sin. After a while, she slowly stopped crying and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Although Shi Jin feels wronged, she doesn't blame you. She wouldn't blame him. She would never blame him. Even if he never knew what she was thinking, she wouldn't blame him. He said with a nod, "Since Shi Li is back, you can watch from the court." After Prime Minister Shi resigned, the Shi family's power has been very weak, so you don't need to worry about your big sister being bullied in the future." His tone was very calm, but it was a great gift to Shili. "Thank you, Emperor." Kuku. Feng Zue cleared his throat and said with a faint sparkle in his deep eyes, "But this one has a request." He was stunned and hurriedly knelt down. "Your Majesty's words are too serious. You only need to order me, and I will do my best." His Majesty actually used the word request, which really made him terrified. "Stay away from Qingchun in the future," he said in a low voice. Although his tone was not cold, his determination could be felt. They hadn't seen each other for a year, but she had already gotten to know this man. He was a man, and as long as he looked at Shi Li, he knew that the way he looked at her wasn't normal at all. It was a gaze that was more than a friend, but less than a lover. Even if he didn't like her, it was a kind of admiration from the bottom of his heart. PFFF, Luo Qingchen couldn't help but chuckle. She covered her mouth and said, "Your Majesty, when you say this, it makes me feel like I'm in another world." It was as if time had never passed, and she had never left his side. But in the days to come, she could clearly feel it. Her departure was that obvious. Because Feng Zue became so worried, he was very afraid that if he blinked and turned around, he would lose her again. Chapter 1369. At midnight, they were playing in the Endless Hall. Luo Qingchen's attainments in Go had greatly increased, but she couldn't beat Feng Zue at all. She lost no matter how she played. It was worth it. "I am so angry." Luo Qingchen looked at the dead end in front of her and angrily looked at Feng Zue. "Feng Zue, I have something to talk to you about." Luo Qingchen not only didn't call herself this minister's concubine in private, she even called him Feng Zue. "I can let you win." He raised a brow as his eyes filled with gentleness. "Who wants you to let me win?" Luo Qingchen pursed her lips. "I'm talking to you about something else, but you have to promise me that you'll agree to my request first. You'll have everything you want." He looked up with a pair of deep eyes that were especially good-looking, like there was a faint glow in them as he seriously looked at her. He liked this time of day the most, when he could put down his work. He brewed a pot of tea and played chess with her. "Can you not come with me every day in the future?" Luo Qingchen said. "For example, when I go to Shi Jin's place, it's strange if you follow me." Feng Zue heard this and looked up before asking in a confused voice, "How is it strange? Shi Jin and I are both girls, so we can talk about girls' thoughts from time to time." She held her cheek with her right hand as she casually put down a piece. "There aren't many girls in the palace other than the maids. Shi Jin won't welcome me if you go a few more times." After all, Feng Zue was there every time. It was a good thing Shi Jin understood her personality. Otherwise, she might have thought that she was deliberately bringing Feng Zue to show off. "Oh," he thoughtfully replied. He used a black piece to end the game before looking up at her. "You mean that this one has too few concubines?" Actually, he was just teasing her. After all, other than her, all other women were just creatures in his eyes. A living creature. Hey. Luo Qingchen stared at him with her eyes wide open and said, "How can you bully people?" I'm asking you seriously. So you want to hear a serious answer?" "Of course." In the next second, he gently raised his right hand and tapped between her eyebrows. "In your dreams." With that, he shrugged and chuckled. "Luo Qingchen, I will never give you the chance to leave me in this lifetime. I won't rest until I die." When he said the last 4 words, his expression was very serious. It was almost like an oath with an aura that could not be refused. He looked at her deeply. To him, the girl in front of him had become an unbearable burden in his life. Actually, for an emperor, he had countless ways to look at her, but he chose the most clumsy way to follow her. He only felt at ease when she was in front of him. "You," Luo Qingchen angrily pursed her lips. "You're going too far." "Qingchen." He took her hand and brought her to his side. He looked at her with an affectionate gaze and said, "I will be afraid that I will suddenly open my eyes one day and the facts will tell me that everything was just a dream. I don't have any wishes. I just want to be by your side, and by your side." Chapter 1370. "All right." Luo Qingchen looked at him and nodded. When she wanted to say something, there was a tearing pain that came from her heart. In the next second, everything in front of him turned black. She suddenly remembered what Yin Xiu told her before leaving. Remember to take your medicine. She really had been too busy these past few days. She didn't take a single pill. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by people. One of them was Yin Xiu. Luo Qingchun didn't know why Yin Xiu was here, but his expression didn't look good. There was a panicked Feng Xizhe standing beside him with tightly knit brows. Seeing that she was awake, he came forward to hug her. "How is it? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" She shook her head and pursed her lips. "I should have forgotten to take my medicine. You know very well why you fainted." Yin Xiu said with a faint smile. "It was a good thing that I was passing by Long Peace City and heard about you. Otherwise, you really would have let down my year of hard work." "How many days?" "You've been unconscious for half a month." She was surprised before slightly knitting her brows. The first thing she did was tightly hold Feng Xizue's hand. Half a month, half a month, half a month. This half a month for Feng Xizue was as dark as hell. In this world, the thing she wanted to do the most was to properly protect him. In the end, it made him fall into deathly despair again and again. That bottomless abyss was so terrifying. "The Imperial doctors can leave." Yin Xiu softly said, "You can't help here. You can all leave." Feng Xizue waved his hand. "The servants can also leave." Feng Xizue naturally knew that Yin Xiu had something to say to them. Moreover, it was just him. "Yes, Emperor." "Yin Xiu, you're a genius, Emperor." He gave a bitter laugh as he put the bottle of medicine in his hand on the bed. "Although you praise me like this, I'm very happy. But I didn't succeed 100% in saving Qingchun. She wouldn't die. She would just gradually wither away. After all, medicine was 30% poison. What he did was to delay the time of her death. It could be a day or two, or it could be a lifetime." Luo Qingchun naturally understood the meaning of his words. If it wasn't something very serious, she wouldn't have been in a coma for half a month. "You said..." She took a deep breath and looked at him. "No matter what the result is, I can accept it. If it wasn't for Yin Xiu, she might not even have the time to do so. You don't have to be so pessimistic. Qingchun won't die immediately." Yin Xiu pointed at the medicine and said, "There are only 5 of these pills in the world. I used a special kind of medicinal ingredient to make them. I'm sure that this kind of medicine no longer exists in this world." Feng Xizhe looked at him, and his eyes were filled with unease as he said in a trembling voice. And then, "Qingchun just needs to take the medicine I gave her." Yin Xiu nodded. 1 pill a day, no more than that. I have already told the imperial physicians about the prescription of this medicine, and they will naturally prescribe it." "Then what about these 5? Luo Qingchun shook the bottle with her right hand as if she had guessed something. She slowly said, "Is it used to save my life?" "Yes." Yin Xiu honestly replied, "If you want to fall into a coma like this again with weak breathing and no pulse, take one immediately. It can save your life." The next second, she smiled helplessly and said, "So, I should have been poisoned, right?" Yin Xiu had told her that medicine was 30% poison. Chapter 1371. Shili said with a nod. "I used the legendary method of fighting poison with poison, letting the poison enter the heart." He paused before shaking his head with a bitter smile. "There's no point in saying this now. You also know that you're talking nonsense." Luo Qingchun rubbed her eyes as she said, "I have a rough idea of my situation, so I don't have much time left. What nonsense are you saying?" Feng Xizhe softly held her hand as his deep voice trembled a bit as he said word for word, "This one won't allow it. Emperor, don't worry first." Yin Xiu continued, "I'm very clear on the poison used on Qingchun. The main reason why she acted up this time was because she was careless and didn't take her usual medicine. I clearly had more important things to do. All right." "Nonsense." Feng Xizhe tightly knit his brows as he looked at her with an angry and helpless gaze. "There is nothing more important than you in this world. She was the person he cared about that much. How could she put herself in danger because of these small things?" Luo Qingchun saw that he was very angry and couldn't help lowering her eyes. "I know. I promise I won't forget in the future." Because she returned to his side, the life that she didn't care about suddenly became more important. It was because she wanted to spend more time with him, just a bit more. Be assured, this one will remind you every day. Although his brows were tightly knit, there was a gentle look in his eyes. Finally, no matter how much time he had left in his life, he wanted to be with her all the time. If she went to heaven, he would go to heaven. If she went to hell, he would go to hell. In this life, they had been with each other for much longer than she imagined. The 5 pills Yin Xiu left behind had played a decisive role in prolonging her life in the long years to come. It had been an entire 10 years after she finished eating them. In these 10 years, Feng Zue had been worried about her every second. He didn't even sleep because he was afraid that if he fell asleep and she acted up, he wouldn't be by her side right away. It had only been 10 years, but he cherished it so much. He had a premonition that she would leave, just like how he had a premonition that she would return. At midnight, he gently hugged her and looked at the bright moon outside the window. He gently said, "It's the 15th of the first year again. Do you still remember that year when we agreed to go see the lanterns together?" She was a little sleepy, and her eyelids slowly closed. Hearing her voice, he opened his eyes with some difficulty and said, "Yes." Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. For the past 10 years, he had been very careful in taking care of her, to the point that he had done everything by himself. He was deeply afraid that the poison in her body would act up if he wasn't careful. But even so, he still couldn't make her stay. She was going to leave. Both of them were very clear in their hearts, but neither of them said anything. As the night breeze blew, the air was filled with the faint fragrance of flowers. She could only hear his rapid breathing and his slightly trembling hands. After a long time, her eyebrows trembled and she said very softly, "Don't be sad. I'll go find you." Her voice was very soft, but he still heard it. He slowly leaned over and placed a kiss on her forehead as he said in a choked voice, "All right, 10 years of life and death. It was unforgettable." Chapter 1372. I'll only borrow your life once, and this will be the rest of your life. Feng Xi, after meeting her, I told myself that I didn't want to fight for the throne, but now I needed it. Because I wanted her to be my empress. But after she became my empress, I knew that she never needed me for her story. She hurt me because of hate and because she wanted revenge. When did it start to change? It should have been that night when she appeared in my royal study. With a nod and a blink of an eye, I felt that she was a completely different person from before. But my heart was still very painful, so painful that I couldn't breathe, because she had a bowl of soup in her hand and wanted to give me the poison to drink. I was 100% certain that it was poison at that time. I looked into her eyes and asked her if she wanted me to drink it that much. Actually, she understood the real meaning. I was asking if she wanted me to die that much. She nodded as there wasn't a trace of hesitation in her clear as water eyes. I drank it, and I felt that my heart had died. Since it was impossible for my life to have anything to do with her, death was the best ending. Anyway, it was just dying a bit earlier. After all, I was very clear that my body was getting worse day by day. The blood-bone snake's poison had already seeped into my blood, and other than the antidote, there was no medicine that could cure me. There was only one thing in my heart. It wouldn't hurt if I died. After all, I could still kiss her one more time before I died. I knew that was the last time, but I never thought that after drinking that bowl of medicine, not only did I not die from the poison, I felt that my exhausted body didn't feel that bad anymore. There was a kind of warm feeling in my blood that was flowing backwards as well as a bit of joy. Although I didn't know what her medicine was, she didn't want to kill me. I was very clear on why, but even if I was clear, my mind was blank when I kissed her. Even if her condition was for Feng Xingyu to return to Long Peace City, even if I had already heard that he had another woman in the barren north, she really was a fool. Feng Xingyu had already given up on her, but she still hoped that he could safely return to Long Peace City. She was a fool, but my heart ached for her. So I helped her. I helped my heart ache. For the next few days, I actually stopped myself from thinking about this matter. I didn't go to the Willful Hall to play chess with Shi Jin. I wanted to escape from my feelings. Just like how I've always known about her cold palace and how I've always wanted to see her. But I tried my best to endure it, telling myself not to go, because my going forward would not make her happy, and I did not want her to be unhappy. But what I didn't expect was that I wouldn't be able to escape successfully this time. But when Uniquely told me very clearly that the medicine she gave me didn't exist in this world, I wanted to see her so much, because I had expectations. The splendid hall, the place I thought she would never return. She was actually half leaning on the soft couch, flipping through my medical books on the table. She said a lot of things to herself, and the one that made me stunned was, "Why can't the poison be detoxified?" At that time, my mood could only be described as ecstatic. She was actually so serious about my health. Chapter 1373. We played a game of chess, and I've always been very good at chess. When I played with Jean in the Willful Hall, I almost never counted. If I lost, then it must be because I missed her and was a bit restless. But her skill at chess really was bad. She was almost very upset. Every time she made a move, she would rub her cute little head, looking very upset. I enjoyed the process of playing chess with her. I liked the feeling of my black chess pieces surrounding her white chess pieces layer by layer. That kind of possessiveness and confinement wasn't because I was born as an emperor, but rather because of her. It was probably because she was the only one who could make me feel this way. I liked her, the entire world knew it, I also knew it myself. I was happy and a bit afraid. After all, in order to heavily hurt me, she didn't hesitate to pretend to move me and come to my side. But in the end, it was like heaven falling into hell. She had personally killed our child. This kind of pain was like pouring salt into a torn wound. It was so painful that I couldn't breathe. But even like this, when she smiled at me, I couldn't let go. I still can't let it go. I lost so thoroughly, and I lost so willingly. But I knew that even if we brought her back to the splendid hall, even if she personally fed me medicine, even if we played a game of chess. However, it still wasn't enough to make my hatred for her dissipate completely. From the beginning to the end, there was a voice in my heart that constantly reminded me. She was suddenly this good to me. It was completely because I had Feng Xingyu leave the barren north and return to Long Peace City. Although I didn't want to believe it, I knew that it was more likely. And I thought that I had verified my own words. The day Feng Xingyu arrived in Long Peace City, she left the palace. That day, there was a bit of snow in the sky. After the morning court, I wanted to find you, but Eunuch Li's words made me unable to take a single step. You left the palace. The day Feng Xingyu came back, you left the palace. My mind was completely blank at that time. It was as if there were only goose feather snowflakes falling one by one. It softly fell into my hand. So cold, so cold. I locked myself in the everlasting palace and drank nonstop. Wine is a good thing. Drinking 2 or 3 times the normal amount can make me feel like I'm in a trance. It can numb my nerves and make my brain work very slowly. But even if it was slow, it was filled with her figure, as if it was moving in slow motion. I liked her. I liked her with all my might. I used up all my strength. In a daze, I seemed to hear something on her body. She seemed to have come and didn't abandon me. She didn't elope with Feng Xingyu. I could only hear my heart thumping. It was as if I had left hell. But in the next second, my mind went blank. I thought about the glass shards on the floor in the dark room, and suddenly realized that my glass shards might have hurt her. I didn't say anything and ran in the direction of her voice. The debris under my feet made cracking sounds, but I didn't feel any pain. In his mind, there was only one thing called rejoicing. She came back. She didn't abandon me. She came back to me. Suddenly, I felt that the so-called hate was built on the basis that she still wanted me. Chapter 1374. We were reconciled. Or it could be said that when she carefully touched my foot and asked if it hurt, I didn't have any other feelings for her other than love. Jean always said that I was a stubborn person, but my life was actually very simple. As long as she was willing to stay by my side, it didn't matter if she loved me or not, because it was enough for me to love her. This was everything I wanted, but I didn't know that our happiness came so late and was so short. Purple Phoenix Mountain, that was where I met her for the first time and where I made a promise to her, but it was also where I lost her. I thought that Yanxiu would keep his promise and not tell her everything. But he still told her, "That's right. I always knew that the person who could cure the blood-bone snake's poison was the person who ate the snake's gallbladder. It wasn't a bit of blood, it was all of her blood. But I didn't want a single drop of her blood, even if a small bowl could relieve my pain and discomfort. Yin Xiu said that I was a demon called stubbornness. I just revealed a faint smile and told him that I promised to marry her. I wouldn't let myself die that easily. Not to mention that since I decided to save her, why would I let her be hurt? I didn't want her to be hurt. I didn't want it at all. But I never thought that in order to save me, she would choose to give up her life. I never thought that a woman would kill her own child in order to take revenge on me. In the end, in the matter of her life and my life, she did something that would hurt me for the rest of my life. When I woke up, I anxiously looked for her. But when I found myself in the palace, my heart almost suffocated. I didn't shout out or do anything crazy. I just ordered everyone to leave the endless hall after knowing what had happened. That night, I didn't sleep at all. The final words I said were, "Luo Qingshun, was that the method you thought of to hurt me again? If it was like this, then you succeeded?" I didn't know how many days passed. I just knew that I drank for a long time. Waking up drunk. Over and over again, I wanted to die, but I needed her corpse. If she was alive, I wanted to see her. If she was dead, I wanted to see her corpse. Before I saw her corpse, I couldn't die. He absolutely could not die. The first thing I did after waking up was to take care of Feng Xingyu in the court. I could see his panicked expression when I stood in front of him. He knelt at my feet and kowtowed, begging me to spare his child, his only bloodline in this world. I smiled. I didn't know how scary that smile was, but I could clearly feel the change in his face. Bit by bit, he became pale and desperate. In the end, I was ordered to cut off his arms and legs, but I did not let him die. He placed him in a large vat and watched Qian Xiu being trampled by Qian Jin with his own eyes. I let his child be trampled out bit by bit. At that moment, I realized that I could still live. Because I have a new hatred. He hated all the people in this world. I became violent, cruel, murderous, and angry. Because I took you away from this world, then I hate everyone in this world. I will carry this hatred with me and wait for you for the rest of my life. If you don't come, I won't be old. Chapter 1375. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by chaos. Luo Qingshun opened her eyes, as if she could feel the familiar aura around her. She was back, and as the name implied, she had died in the end. But she was late by 10 years. For him and the host, this is the best ending. She blinked and didn't respond. The host can choose to watch the scene after you die. Yes/no, I won't. She shook her head, not planning on watching the next scene. She already knew what kind of decision Feng Xizue would make after she died. This kind of decision, there was no one in this world that could change his mind. She knew, so she didn't force him to live even in the end. After all, that would be too cruel to him. The following is a summary of the mission. Host, please properly look over it. Name, Luo Qingshun World, Paranoid Emperor. Let's go to hell together, all right? Mission completion rate, 100% experience space, currently has 5 items. Full, iPhone 999, exquisite ring, 9-section moon whip, moon glass fan, I'm the prettiest mirror, permanent abilities, space and time freeze level 1 exchange points, 14,000 base points, 40-inch open the shopping center. Ding, successfully opened the shopping center. Luo Qingshun looked at it and said, recycle items. The system looked very aggrieved, but it still did it. Recycle the iPhone 999 and I'm the prettiest mirror. Luo Qingshun couldn't take these 2 things anymore, since the use of these 2 things was, other than taking up space, it was still taking up space. Successfully recycled the iPhone 999 and I'm the prettiest mirror. The host has received 20,000 exchange points. Luo Qingshun gave a satisfied nod before turning to the last page. I want to exchange for the Phoenix Dance Sword. Ding, 30,000 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for the Phoenix Dance Sword. Host remaining exchange points, 4,000. The system never thought that Luo Qingshun would want to exchange for the Phoenix Dance Sword. This sword was a high-grade divine weapon in the shopping center. Compared to the exquisite ring, it was a grade higher. In the next second, Luo Qingchen successfully exchanged for the divine sword with 30,000 exchange points. The Phoenix Dance sword was surrounded by frosty white light. Layers of white light surrounded the sword, and a faint golden light flickered inside. The sword was not heavy, but it contained a lot of spiritual energy. Although Luo Qingchen hadn't used it yet, she could completely feel the power of this sword. The greatest use of the Phoenix Dance sword is to slay souls, seizing one's soul, dispersing all ostentatiousness, slaying everything in the void. She squinted her eyes and placed the Phoenix Dance sword into her spatial pocket. She liked this sword the first time she saw it in the shop, but she couldn't get it because she didn't have enough exchange points. The reason she was able to get the sword this time was purely because she saw the words recycled at the bottom. Not to mention the beautiful mirror. Even the iPhone 999, ever since it appeared in her portable space, she had not used it even once. The system didn't dare to speak. The host was very angry. Host, the 24th mission panel is below. In the next second, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission grade, experience gained, 500. Female lead, Luo Qingchen male lead, and Yu Sheng supporting female lead, Xia Qing Ro supporting male lead, Zhao Jin Xin mission content. Return to 3 days before the female lead died and obtain the love of the male lead and Yu Sheng. Side mission, become a student of the affiliated high school and lead the second-year Class 7 students to obtain first place in the final exam. Chapter 1376. When Luo Qingchen received all the memories, she concluded that the supporting female lead was a good person. At least she had a better personality than the previous host. Although in comparison, Luo Qingchen liked the previous host's personality more. As for the male lead and the previous host, this was a story of mutual harm. The previous host was a school bully. To put it bluntly, she was a youth. She didn't know who her parents were since she was young and grew up in a commoner's courtyard. She could be considered a child who grew up eating hundreds of meals. This kind of bad living environment had already formed the previous host's personality. As long as she could eat her fill and wear warm clothes, she could do some things that weren't very righteous. For example, chasing the school hunk in Yu Sheng for Liang Bingbing. As his name suggested, the male lead of this world was a gentle as jade man. Just like a warm breeze, he was very clean. However, behind the gentleness, there was a stubborn heart. The male lead in Yu Sheng and the supporting female lead Xia Qing Ro had been childhood sweethearts since they were young, so the two of them were very compatible. Although in Yu Sheng was gentle, it was a kind of gentleness in his indifference. He never accepted any girl's love letters. He always had a faint smile as he softly replied with 4 words. Study well. Liang Bingbing had always been a top student and a school flower. A talented and beautiful girl would always have a kind of pride, so the youth she liked would definitely like her. However, even the outstanding Liang Bingbing was rejected by Yu Sheng on a certain evening. There would always be a single girl behind him, which was the supporting female lead Xia Qing Ro of this world. Everyone thought that they were a couple, but they didn't know that Yu Sheng had always treated Xia Qing Ro as his little sister. It was because Xia Qing Ro's parents had died when she was young and their father was a comrade. Therefore, their family took Xia Qing Ro in when she was young. She was also a gentle and weak woman, exuding a scholarly temperament from head to toe. She wasn't considered a beauty, but she was still a beautiful girl. There were quite a few boys who chased her on campus, but she had tactfully rejected them all. Although all the Yu Sheng versions were very similar, there was one thing that was different. Xia Qing Ro liked Yu Sheng, but Xia Qing Ro didn't treat Yu Sheng as her big brother. It was just that she had never said it out loud. He didn't ask, and she didn't say. They maintained their unique tacit understanding in front of the envious childhood sweethearts. But Liang Bingbing couldn't forgive Yu Sheng. After all, she was the school belle of the affiliated high school. There were many people chasing after her. The prouder definitely would not allow herself to lose to Xia Qing Ro, who was inferior to her in every way. She thought in her heart that if she couldn't have it, Xia Qing Ro wouldn't be able to either. She even wanted to destroy her. Therefore, she found the society youth, which was the original owner, Luo Qingchen. In terms of beauty, Liang Bingbing and Xiaqing Ro could not compare to the original host. But in terms of knowledge, the host didn't. Liang Bingbing had met the previous host at her cousin Zhao Jinxian's birthday. Her family background wasn't bad, and after being rejected, she decided to use this dirty little girl to make Yusheng no longer be a clean youth. The transaction was very simple. No matter what method the previous host used, as long as Yusheng fell in love with her, she would succeed. The transaction amount was $2,000. Although the host also disdained this kind of stealing behavior, she wasn't a little princess from an ivory tower. Chapter 1377. She would faint if she was hungry, and she would die if she fainted. She had fainted 3 times since she was young, but she woke up with her willpower each time. This kind of life let her know that in front of death, all human nature was small. Therefore, she agreed to Liang Bingbing's request. Actually, the previous host's road to Yusheng wasn't smooth because no matter what she did, Yusheng never agreed to be with her. Because from beginning to end, he always had Xiaqing Ro by his side, whether it was rain or shine. But for $2,000, the previous host couldn't give up. If she gave up, she would really starve to death next month. Actually, the supporting male lead, Zhao Jinxian, didn't give her a chance. He wanted her to work at his bar, but the previous host rejected him. Although the previous host was poor, she had her own principles. She knew that it didn't matter who called her a dirty girl in this world, because she knew that she wasn't. On the last day of November, the previous host took a loudspeaker to confess to Yusheng at the entrance of the affiliated high school. She said, "Yusheng, I will be here waiting for you every day. Whether it is rain or wind, I will wait for you for a month. If you aren't willing to accept me, I will give up on you." It was snowing heavily in a city that day. She was wearing a furry black sweater and ripped skull jeans. She had smoky eyeshadow, black eyeliner, and a peak cap. The 4 black diamond studs in her right ear sparkled, and she had a lollipop in her mouth. There were many young students at the school gate who looked at her with strange gazes. She knew that they were gazes of disdain, but she didn't care. Not everyone was a little princess protected in an ivory tower. At least she wasn't. The complexity of society had already made her understand how sinister people could be. Therefore, she didn't care about these gazes. But Yusheng was stunned in that moment. Yusheng, who had always been called the genius school hunk, felt that the previous host had something that he desired. It was called freedom. But even so, he just passed by her without saying a single word. Time passed very quickly. The previous host would quickly eat a steamed bun every morning before waiting for Yusheng at the school gate. But whether it was rain or shine, he never looked at the previous host. Xiaqing Ro would always secretly give her water and food and advise her not to wait anymore. Her original words were, "Yusheng, big brother, he doesn't care about relationships between men and women." Xiaqing Ro had never doubted the original host's love. On the contrary, her heart ached for the original host's love. Although this kind of love was different from the feelings hidden in her heart, it was essentially the same. If he couldn't get what he loved, there was no way out. The previous host had waited for 30 days, and Yusheng had passed her 30 times. Finally, on the rainy December 31st, the previous host didn't wait for Yusheng at the school gate. She gave up on the last day because it was raining heavily. And Yusheng would never forget that when he didn't see that familiar voice at the school gate, his heart skipped a beat. There was a faint sense of loss and an inexplicable sense of unwillingness. That day, Yusheng would go to the rooftop of the East building after class because he could see the school gate from there. From the first class to the last class, that figure did not appear. She seemed to be like a hot ray of light, shining into his cold heart without any warning, and then quietly leaving without any notice. Chapter 1378. The previous host didn't go on the last day not because Liang Bingbing gave her money, but rather because she decided not to go. One was because Xiaqing Ro had taken care of her for 30 days, facing such a kind girl. If she used such despicable methods again, she would feel that she was very ugly. 2. There was an inexplicable feeling. The previous host had never seen Yusheng before, But when everyone around her said that she liked him, she liked him, she liked him, she couldn't help liking him. She strangely paid attention to his every move, to his eyes, and to the occasional faint look in his eyes. The previous host was a smart person. She knew that when her feelings changed, this task wasn't pure anymore. But she still waited for him, waiting for him for an entire 30 days. She wanted to satisfy her desire to see him, and she wanted to release all the expectations in her heart. Until the last day, she gave up, because she knew that he wouldn't like her. After all, if he liked her a bit, he would at least give her a bit of a response. But Anyushing didn't. Although the previous host didn't last to the last day, Liang Bingbing kept her promise and gave her $2,000. But there was a request. Liang Bingbing wanted her to leave his city forever. The previous host didn't know that she had succeeded, but Liang Bingbing did. Because on the night of December 31st, Anyusheng found Zhao Jinxian's bar through a friend's gossip. He was actually looking for Luo Qingchun. When Liang Bingbing learned of this matter, she was incomparably shocked. Anyusheng was such a dazzling youth. He actually came to a bar to find a delinquent girl. Of course, she never told this to the previous host, but the previous host didn't plan on leaving city. She found a job as a singer in a music bar, singing old songs in a place that was filled with alcohol at the age of 17. But she felt that this feeling was very good. At least she had worked hard to get this job. The music bar kept its promise and didn't let her do anything other than singing. This boss was simply a natural difference from Zhao Jinxian. The previous host didn't work at the supporting male lead's bar because the supporting male lead wanted her to be a princess. For the previous host, at least here, was quite good. But the previous host never thought that Anyusheng would find her. He said a lot of things, but the original owner didn't hear a single word. It wasn't until the bar was over that she slowly said, "I lied to you for 2,000 yuan. Anyusheng was shocked when he heard this, but he respected her decision and asked if her words counted. The host replied that he didn't count. Anyusheng said that he would also wait for her for a month. Anyusheng waited at the entrance of the bar for 30 days, but on the 31st day, Anyusheng didn't appear. That night, he died. In order to go out for his sister, Zhao Jinxian wanted to lead a group of people to the music bar to find trouble with the original owner. That day, the original owner asked for leave and didn't go to work. She wanted to reject Anyusheng, but she never thought that Anyusheng would be stabbed 10 times by Zhao Jinxian for her and fall to the ground. That young genius never woke up again. After the previous host learned of this matter, in order to take revenge for Anyusheng, she brought a barrel of gasoline to Zhao Jinxian's bar. Chapter 1379. Host, time is of the essence. Please don't be in a daze. The system's reminder woke her up from her memories, and she looked at the clock on the wall. January 31st, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My God! She pursed her lips and took a set of normal clothes from the closet, putting it on as she went out. Time really was of the essence. She didn't have any time to hesitate at all. The previous host's clothes were mostly black punk style, a hard and cold style. She personally said, "I don't like it. System, please tell me the affection level." The male lead's affection level for the previous host is 0%. Luo Qingchun knit her brows in doubt because she couldn't immediately guess what kind of person the male lead was. Was he a clean and gentle student or an unruly youth? Properly speaking, if the male lead had been waiting for her for 30 days, it didn't seem like there was no affection. System notification. The male lead has a hidden personality disorder. Spirit. Mental illness? To put it simply, the things he wants will be obtained through all sorts of abnormal means. With the system's explanation, Luo Qingchun could understand why there was no affection. The male lead didn't like the previous host like a man and woman. Rather, it was a kind of split possession. Although it couldn't be seen on the surface, as long as the desire in his heart was ignited, it couldn't be stopped. There was a kind of person in this world who had many people who loved him, but he had never tasted love. He had imagined that one day there would be someone he could fall in love with. At that time, he wouldn't be that gentle as Jade youth. Rather, he would become a terrifying person with a strong desire to control. On the way to the music bar, Luo Qingchun kept thinking about what the system had said to her. What happened to the gentle as jade and clean male lead? How did he change like this? Before she even reached the entrance of Zhao Jinxian's bar, Luo Qingshan saw and Yusheng. He was wearing the uniform of the affiliated high school, with a brown sweater over a white car. He had ordered a cup of coffee and was silently sitting in the open-air lounge outside the bar. As long as the young boys and girls passed by him, their gazes would unconsciously stop on him. The young man who seemed to be glowing had elegance and handsomeness in his every movement. Luo Qingshan was about a step forward when she saw Zhao Jinxian not far away. There were a lot of people standing behind him. They were here to get even with her. It seemed like this time, she, the so-called mission executor, had completely hurt the client's heart. Luo Qingshan knit her brows. She pulled up her coat and put her hands in her pockets as she quickly walked in Yusheng's direction. She had her back to Yusheng as she leaned back in the chair. Come with me. And Yusheng was surprised, although he didn't see who it was. But he could sense who she was. But he didn't move. Luo Qingshan bit her lip and was a little anxious. Seeing that Zhao Jinxian was coming closer, she took Zhao Jinxuan's hand and softly took it. She lowered her head and said, "You forced me." She didn't want to use such a cruel method, but Yusheng's slow actions made her have no choice but to do this. The youth standing beside her was a bit surprised as his lips couldn't help curling into a faint curve. He gently lowered his left hand and abruptly tightened his grip on her hand that was holding onto him. Suddenly, there was a warmth that came from her sweater. Chapter 1380. Luo Qingshan said that she had pulled in Yusheng in the beginning, but then it became in Yusheng holding her hand. There was a small path in the park with plum blossoms on both sides, and there was a faint fragrance in the air. "If you don't like me, what are you waiting for me for?" Luo Qingshan looked up, and a clear voice sounded in Yusheng's ears. He paused before slowly letting go of her hand. When he turned around, his originally clean and gentle eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of gray mist. He only saw his hands in his pockets as he looked her up and down and said, "Then do you like me?" And Yusheng cleverly changed the topic as a faint smile appeared in his deep eyes. With the night breeze, the plum blossoms fell. His smile, against the light of the setting sun, rippled in her eyes bit by bit. At least not right now. She looked up with heavy makeup and a jacket. But in her eyes, which seemed to be able to see through everything, there was a faint pride. This was like a game in their hearts. She didn't love him, and he didn't love her. But because of this inexplicable personality disorder, he could lose his life because of a little bit of care. Luo Qingshan found it hard to imagine what it would be like if this youth really fell in love with someone. "I know about your deal with Liang Bingbing." He slowly raised his right hand and gently took the plum blossom petals off her head. "So I know that you don't like me." Luo Qingshan gave a shrug and looked at him with a harmless look. "Sorry, little big brother, but I was forced by life." She wasn't lying. The previous host was forced by life. After all, in her 17 years of life, she hadn't eaten a full meal once. And Yusheng's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was a trace of disappointment in his deep as the sea eyes. He knew very well that when he found out that the girl in front of him didn't really like him, but was only putting on a show for the sake of 2,000 yuan, he had mixed feelings in his heart. This was the first time he had such a strange feeling in the depths of his heart. It was as if someone had suddenly told him that something that originally belonged to him had never belonged to him. This feeling of unwillingness surged into his morbidly stubborn brain layer by layer. Some things once started cannot be taken back. The past is the past, and the present is the present. He looked up and stared into her eyes. "You will fall in love with me." He smiled. His eyes were half closed as he smiled coldly. This kind of smile did not belong to the genius school hunk at all. It belonged to another person, a demon hiding in the depths of his heart. "Pucci." She gave a soft laugh as she looked at Yusheng with a faint liguang in her eyes. "Whether I fall in love with you or not depends on whether you fall in love with me. Will you? A gust of evening wind blew, and the fragrance of plum blossoms in the air became even stronger. A test paper about love was handed to both of them at the end of January, and Yusheng looked at her, looking at that beautiful face and slightly pursed his lips. I've never loved anyone before, but what? She blinked and smiled with dimples on her face. But if I fall in love with someone, I will become very terrifying. Will you be afraid? And Yu Sheng had never thought that the first person he would listen to in this life would be Luo Qingchun, who he had met for such a short time. Chapter 1381. Coco, she said with a faint smile. We have too many ifs. That's right. If she fell in love with him, and if he fell in love with her. Actually, it was just an if for the two of them. The next morning, Luo Qingchun received a call from an Yu Sheng in her sleep. When they parted last night, he proudly saved his phone number into her phone. Just like that, the two of them exchanged phone numbers. And Yu Sheng's voice on the phone was even better than normal, making people feel a bit tipsy. Get up. I'll take you to breakfast. His voice was very gentle, like he was an elegant gentleman's boyfriend. But Luo Qingchun knew that he wasn't. He had already started to answer the questions on the test paper about love. And Yu Sheng, your move really is powerful. Luo Qingchun had to admit that in terms of EQ. And Yu Sheng was the highest out of all the male leads she had ever seen. He knew how to capture a girl's heart, and he also knew when to do what to make others have a good impression of him. At least the good morning call was a kind of attentiveness. We've waited for each other for 30 days. Shouldn't we make up for the 60 days? He didn't respond to Luo Qingchun's words at all. Rather, he changed the topic to the word ambiguous, without knowing why, toward that girl. It wasn't like or love, but there was an inexplicable possessiveness. When he woke up in the middle of the night, he could deeply feel how terrifying he was. Now that Luo Qingchun was just a bit curious to him, and he cared about her a bit, he couldn't control his possessiveness. If there was a day when he really fell in love with her, what would it be like? He was a bit expectant and a bit afraid. He was looking forward to a day when he fell in love with someone, but he was afraid. The person he fell in love with didn't love him. Luo Qingchun looked at the dirty little room, as well as the punk shirts and jeans scattered all over, and slightly knit her brows. She said to Yu Sheng on the other side with a faint smile, "Can I reject you?" "No." The voice on the other end of the phone was very firm. Luo Qingchun seemed to be able to hear the whispers of the girls around her. "Ah, isn't that campus hunkin'? So handsome. So he likes to eat breakfast here. Oh my God, I should have come every day. Are you regretting it now? Who told you to wake up so late every day and miss out on countless school hunks?" Luo Qingchun listened to the gossips of the onlookers, pursed her lips, and asked, "Don't tell me you want to introduce me to your classmates." "Can I?" His soothing voice drifted into her ears as he continued. "Energetic breakfast shop on the right side of the school. I'm waiting, don't." She directly interrupted him and said, "I won't be going today, another day." There was no response from the other end of the phone for a long time. Luo Qingchun could clearly feel that he was a little angry. But there was a reason why she didn't go. After all, her current identity was still that of a social bully, while he was that dazzling school hunk. Although Luo Qingchun didn't care about the difference between them, but she knew that there were many people in the affiliated school waiting to see her make a fool of herself. Chapter 1382. The first thing she had to do now was big change. This change wasn't just limited to her clothes, it was also limited to where she lived. In the previous planes, most of the original owners had a decent background, so they had more or less suppressed those little white flowers. But the previous host of this world really didn't have anything. Since she couldn't become a rich second generation, she could only become rich one generation. But since she only had 4,000 exchange points, it was impossible for her to become a millionaire. According to the exchange rate the system gave her before, 500 exchange points was 100,000, so 2,000 exchange points was 400,000. The host wants to become a rich first generation with 400,000. Is it very hard? The system feels it isn't easy. Then let's wait and see. Ding! 2,000 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for one black card worth 400,000. Before she made a change, she had to have some things. First, a place to live. There were two high-end buildings near the affiliated high school. One was a high-end residential area, and the other was a villa. The high-end residential area had a monthly rent of 10,000, and the villa was 20,000. The difference was double, but Luo Qingshun chose the villa in the end and paid for half a year. The landlords were a middle-aged couple who were preparing to settle down in America. They gave her a discount, only taking 100,000. Since the house was decorated in the style of a European royal family, it was very high-end, so she didn't waste money on decorating it. In the afternoon, she went around Wanda and swept through her clothes, shoes, and bags. Other than the expensive evening gown, the rest weren't that expensive. After all, she was still a student, so she didn't need to wear luxury clothes. When she came home at night, she received a text from Yu Sheng after taking a shower. "There's a concert for God tomorrow. Do you want to go?" And Yu Sheng, holding her phone, she had a faint smile on her lips. It was like when she was young, the senior that everyone worshipped, inviting the girl he liked to a concert. But she knew that the word like was too far away for her and in Yu Sheng. "All right, Luo Qingshun, ding dong." Before she put down her phone after replying, and Yu Sheng's text came. "I'll pick you up at the bar after school." And Yu Sheng, seeing the word bar, Luo Qingshun's eyes unconsciously trembled. And Yu Sheng was such an excellent youth, but he could go to a complicated place like a bar because of him. He didn't seem to care about other people's opinions at all, and only pursued what he wanted in his heart. "I don't work there anymore. Give me the concert address. See you at the door then." Luo Qingshun, since he was such an outstanding youth, then becoming better for him was something to be proud of. She put down her phone and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the luxurious living room. She pulled her hair in frustration. I'm not very satisfied." The hair at the top was relatively soft, but the middle to the roots was rather rough. It should be caused by excessive ironing, and there were also pinches of red and green colors. This head, it was about time to fix it. After all, the side mission this time was to go to school.